Bismillahirrahmanirrahim wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Peace, I'm Brother Ali. Welcome back to the Travelers Podcast. We always begin by saying Assalamu alaikum, which is a prayer associated with the religion of Islam. And it's a prayer saying, may peace be your state. May that be your condition. Peace be upon you. But salam doesn't only mean peace. It does mean peace, but it means a peace that's representative and becomes about because of wholeness. So it really means, may you be whole. May you be complete. May that be your condition. And that's a really beautiful thing to say. And I'm really grateful for that, having that greeting, because that's really what we want from each other. We want wholeness. We want stillness. We want to be complete. We want human beings to be complete. And that greeting comes into hip hop culture when we say peace, both as a way of greeting and also a way of parting. So when we see each other, peace, 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 what's going on? Peace, what up? Also when we leave, all right, peace out, And the word peace was in hippie culture as a thing to say, but as a greeting, it enters the popular culture through hip hop because of the fact that hip hop is so inspired by Black Islam, by particular forms of Black Islam, such as the 5% Nation of Gods and Earths, the Nation of Islam, the Lost Found Nation of Islam in North America. Also the community of Imam Warthi Muhammad, also the community of Dr. Malachi York in Brooklyn and Atlanta, also the community of Noble Drew Ali. These were people that sparked Black consciousness and had such a huge impact on the founding of hip hop as a culture. That's why that word peace is in there. And, just kind of reflecting on this idea of wholeness and being complete, that's really what this podcast is about. And that's what culture is about, that distinction that we make between entertainment and the music industry and culture. Culture is the connective tissue that holds us together and that preserves context. Part of what this culture does, this culture of domination and colonization and dehumanizing others, of white supremacy and so many other forms of domination, is that it robs people of their culture and of their context. It tells lies of omission because it shows people in certain parts of their picture. It's very selective of what it allows to be in the screen and in focus and what it leaves out of the story. And in so much of what's left out of these stories is the fullness of the humanity of the people who do the art, who create the art that we love. The Kanye West documentary is such a great example of that because, I've always loved this guy and he said so many things that I'm like, whoa, wow, okay, But I was around, seeing Kanye in this documentary. Kanye was out promoting himself and trying to get recognized at the same time I was. Shadows on the Sun came out the same year and around the same time as College Dropout. And I remember seeing him at radio stations and at press things. And, I would see Kanye. And, and I've always had this deep love for him. And I don't know him, we met, but I don't know him like that. We've got a lot of mutual friends, and some people that are really important to him are also really important to me, but I don't know him like that. And so you see Kanye, what's shown on the news and in the media, and it's easy to be like, oh, he's crazy and he's a narcissist and he's this and he's that. But I'm so grateful for this documentary, and I cried so many times watching this thing, watching Kanye have to expose himself to so much rejection when deep down all he's saying is, hey, there's something amazing. There's a treasure inside me that deserves to be heard. And everybody's rejecting him almost, and what it takes to push, Kanye kept pushing when I didn't. I found a group of people, a group of listeners that would support me and let me say whatever I wanted. And honestly, I stopped trying to grow my platform and expand it beyond that. I found the people that listened to me and I was just like, okay, I can live on this. And I didn't want to expose my heart to that rejection anymore. And so I just got comfortable living in that. That's the truth. And I realized that so much watching that documentary. But Kanye didn't, and seeing him with his beautiful mother, Miss Donda, again, never met her, I don't think. Although my brother Rhymefest who wrote a lot of the stuff for Kanye and still continues to help a lot with the writing. He ran her foundation. I think he maybe still does. Donda's house. Seeing him with his mother, and you realize like his mother is the only person on earth that really understands him and knows how to be with him and knows how to hold him. So we see these pictures of Kanye, but we're robbed of the context. So I'm so grateful for that documentary to show, who this person is as the full human being that he is. Because all he's been saying this whole time is, I have a treasure inside me that others might benefit from. And he's been right the whole time, the whole time. And, what it takes for him to push, be it further than I was willing to push, is really powerful. I'm in a hotel. People are running their water. That's a good sign for me to try to move on, Brother Ali. I could talk about this forever, but this is what this podcast is about. Somebody just stop brushing their teeth or whatever. But man, this reality of like, we see these artists and we hear their amazing art. We see Sa Rock and we hear Chuck D. We hear their amazing art. And we see these great leaders like Ilhan Omar and Cornel West and Keith Ellison. But there's so much there. There's the community. There's the family. There's the backstory. There's the fullness and the richness of their humanity. That's what I'm interested in, because that's what led me to hip hop. My parents are white. I come from this, section of life, but I didn't discover black music and fall in love with black music and then say, oh, let me get to know these people, which is what a lot of people do. And there's we don't choose our entrance into things, our introduction to things, especially when we're little. But, I was taught how to live life by black families and by black communities and by black elders and friends. And, that's the way that life became livable for me. And then I discovered the music afterwards. So what I've always wanted to do is just share what I believe to be the truth. And what my experience has been. Like, look at the richness and the beautiful, even just beautiful resistance, and the what it says about the human spirit and the richness of the soul of a human being, the priceless ocean of meaning that's in every single human being and in us as a human family. So that's what we're here to do. Along those lines, I want to get to our episode this week is with one of my dear beloved friends. I consider him to be a teacher, Stokley Williams, who is known so long for his work with Mint Condition, and now he's embarked on the solo part of his career. Stokley is somebody that's really well known in the black community and not very well known outside of the black community because of the fact that Mint Condition never crossed over. They never became mainstream. And really what that means is they're celebrated in black communities. You go to a black wedding or a family reunion or graduation party, and if their big songs come on, Breaking My Heart, which is better known by Pretty Brown Eyes, or Swinging, You Send Me Swinging, or What Kind of Man Would I Be, or like all of these amazing records that they have. Everybody's reacting to those in a black environment, in a black space. In a white space, it's like, maybe I've heard this before. So they didn't cross over, and basically what it means to be mainstream is that white people like you. And for an artist like Stokley, who, has Grammy nominations, he has huge hits on Billboard. They sell out arenas in DC or Oakland or Texas or, places that have big black communities that have money to spend on concerts. They're super celebrated and well known. And I've talked to, some of the people that support this podcast that live in DC and live in other places. And they're like, yo, you're talking to Stokley. That's amazing. But, there are so much of that context is lacking. And so we hear from Stokley that his father is the leading black historian and public intellectual in the Twin Cities, Elder Mahmoud Al-Kati, who's a professor and, just an amazing elder and teacher in the community. And we hear about Stokley's past in music. They came out being a band when that wasn't popular and insisting on it. They came out in the 90s, those were singing groups. They came out in the 90s speaking to women as full human beings, not just saying that you remind me of my Jeep, not just wanting to knock the boots, not just wanting to, go half on a bait, but really like speaking to women as human beings and asking questions. What kind of man would I be if I treated women like this? You know what I mean? All of these really major things that they insisted upon talking about. Black standards of beauty, resisting, that the idea that white standards of beauty is the only way to be beautiful. To a song called Pretty Brown Eyes. So Stokley stuck to his guns, and he's always done that. And now as a solo artist, he's continuing to do that. And he's an amazing human being with an amazing story, so I'm so grateful to have him on the podcast. So we'll jump right into that. Forgive me for being so long-winded, but man, I could talk about all these things for hours. Anybody that has to listen to me talk all the time knows that, trust me, this is short. I'm trying to become more brief with these intros, but we're brought to you by Zika Foundation. We're brought to you by Resma Menakem and his new book, The Quaking of America. We're brought to you by Vice Gerent, makers and manufacturers of fine men's clothing, and then also by UPF, Unity Productions Foundation. So enjoy this episode. Thank you so much for being here on the Travelers Podcast. I really want to start with talking about your dad.
Oh, right.
I'm. It's interesting, like for all of the interviews and all of the things that people do about you, I think that it's largely unknown to the people that know how great and how amazing you are, and all of us are who we are because somebody raised us and poured into us and taught us and loved us, and we have a community. But for the people that may be watching or listening that don't realize that your father is the premier Black elder, historian, professor, public intellectual scholar, and a really accessible one at that, Elder Dr. Mahmoud Al-Kati. So yeah. I wonder if you could just start out by just talking about Pops and a little bit about his work and life and, just to introduce the people to Pops.
Absolutely, man. He is everything that you mentioned, to me as well, and to many others, and that a lot of that wouldn't be possible. All the ground that he's covered too without my mother, Titi Leo, as well. So I'd give her some absolute props and love, mm-hmm. and holding the family up is, me coming through when I was younger and, just seeing all the work that she put in so that he was able to go out here and literally fight, figuratively and literally fight for rights and some advancement for us, progress. But this man is still my North Star, I call him. And everything that I've done, he is probably one of the fiercest, most engaged, what should I say? He's focused as a laser, always just right there. And I'm just like, man, it's just amazing. He's relentless. He can't help but to teach. And you've been around him, it's just like if you're going to ask him a question, you might want to have a seat.
Right.
Because you're going to be something, whether you want to learn or not, you're going to learn something out of it. You're going to learn you today. So it's been, I can just remember times when I was younger, you'd take me somewhere, and if you're being a young kid, you have all this energy and you have all these different interests and your friends, you want to go do this and that. You may not want to go to a meeting with him when you're, 12 years old or something like that. I'm like, nah, why? But why? I don't want to go over to the way over north. And, So, but little did I know, all these things were seeping into me, and just looking at the examples, not only of him, but I saw all of these strong Black men who, a lot of them became my mentors, people who helped look out for me. That was part of my village. Mm-hmm. So all the things all these popular phrases that we hear today, it takes a village and all these different things. And, that was me. I was a child of the revolution back then. Mm-hmm. So, I was, just kind of front seat to all these different things, which I didn't understand at the time. But I think sometimes it wasn't for me to understand fully. Sometimes just to sit there in it, the way that I was feeling sometimes. Yes, all of that. I needed that, mm-hmm. just because that shows growth. Like by the time I got to be a teenager, I was like, okay, I'm starting to get it. He'd been talking about white supremacy for the longest time, and how we all have white supremacy in us because of, the system. So I was like, what are you talking about? I'm not white supremacy. What are you talking? Little did I know, as it started living a little bit more, it's like, okay. So this thing has exploded with, George Floyd thing and things, all the stuff that we don't see. So these are the things that I grew up learning, and just, self-love, love about your culture, I grew up playing. That's part of the reason I grew up playing, African instruments, playing with African dance troupes, and learning chants and these different things. You happen to know this brother from Panama, Francisco Lloyd. My father heard something. Both my parents heard something. It was some antique bongos they brought back from one of their trips to Africa, and they were like, "Wow, sound like somebody knows what is that?" It was this tap tap tap. It sounded like somebody knew some patterns, but it was me beating out some patterns or whatever. It's like, and he rubbed his eyes like, am I seeing what I'm seeing? I must have been three or something like
they're
that.
waking up in bed and they're hearing
Yeah.
drums, but it's not a record. And you're like 3-4 years old.
Right.
And
yeah.
you pull the bongos down off the wall, and when
Yeah.
they're
Yeah, whatever it was. Whatever it was. I'm just going to town, And he said, I don't want to be, I might be biased, but it sounds good to me. I don't know though. So you called his friend, you tell me, come over here and see if he's any good, or is it just me, this father-son thing, He said, no, he's got quick hands, just gotta take him with me. And then my first gig was at the First National Bank in Minneapolis at the time. I was standing on top of this metal chair, and the caption in the paper was, big drum, tiny drummer. Because I was standing, the drum was bigger than me, so I was standing on top of there. So these things he saw me at a very young. This wasn't just a regular American conga. It might have been a company called Gone Bop, which I used to love Gone Bop and LP congas. And yeah, man, I hadn't graduated the djembes yet. Djembe, when I saw one of those, I'd be like, oh wow, it's just like the real thing.
The talking drum. You got to learn the language of that joint.
Yes, yeah, man. So Pops saw a lot of these things. He would, just any little contest or anything, any little neighborhood community thing event that they were having, he tried to enter me into it, and just to get the exposure. And the thing again that I didn't understand at the time is like, okay, before you play, I want you to say something about the drum. I want you to say something about the rhythm you're playing. All these things. I was like, can I just play, man? Come on, girl. Why? Why do we got to do all that?
You got to give a dissertation first.
I'm like, yeah. But I'm so glad that he did that, because it helped bring me out of my shell, because I was definitely a shyer kid. In some ways, I still can be. Everybody has these things, and we're just nothing but children with layers anyway. We call ourselves grown-ups, but that's how it goes. But these things kind of helped me to develop, and he again was there. Both my parents saw that, and they're like, they just kept, supporting in that way. And when it got time where I started playing, with making these connections with other people and playing in bands, we would rehearse down in a lot of the bands I was in rehearsed down in the basement, my parents' house. And so I don't know how they stood all that noise. I mean, it was a lot. It was a lot. It was loud, and it didn't let up. I was always practicing. If no one was there, it was me practicing. My mom coming home like, headache, and she would turn the light off and off and on and off. It's like, can you, bring the volume down a little bit? I would do it for like 5 minutes, and I'd creep up. Them full volume again. He's like, hey! I'm like, oh, and I creeped on. So on and on we go, and that process and that pattern would continue. So yeah, they were, just by being there and allowing that says so much. It allowed me to explore in a world that was just new to me, of just like, that felt good. I felt like I was meeting myself every day, every time that I would, hear. It's like, these are my thoughts. Communicate, and telling my body what to do. And I was just developing, I didn't realize I was developing a skill, and then playing with other people, learning how to communicate through vibration. I say something, they say something back. We say something at the same time, and on we go, depending on how many players are in the room, and this is the language of music, the language of, this is that, the sonic vibration that is, it resonates through us. We have music in us. It's just, we have to find it. That's why I think a lot of kids and, as humans, we love drums, because it's here first, the heartbeat. And yeah, man, this is something I've always, when I used to play in drum and bugle corps, we're like, why do kids always rush to drums in the street? It's like, because it's in us. We love it. And it doesn't go anywhere. It's just like these other things that we learn, that we either mute it. I actually know some people who don't like music, or they're like, I can take it or leave it. I'm like, wow, really? That's that's amazing to me. And they have another type of brain. Not bad, just different.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's just interesting to hear that, because I can't imagine.
Like what's informing your speech and your movement if you don't have music? Like the movement of your body and your speaking and your relating. If you're missing that language of music, it's almost like missing an entire sense. But it's more than just one sense, because like you say,
Right.
there's a visual element to music, and there's a, and that's something that's so beautiful about the way that jazz musicians, or especially like Miles and his crew, were just like, I could tell by the way a mother held the horn whether or not he could play that.
Right,
You know
right,
what I mean?
right.
Just like you hold the horn wrong.
Yeah,
I don't
right.
care what it sounds like. You look like a punk, man. I don't like
Right,
it.
right.
It's not going to
Right.
work. No, get out of the whole building. I can't play with you in the building.
No, you don't look right. Get out.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, that is definitely, what is informing. That's so true, man. It's like, because it's life is music. That's not just a phrase. Life is music and music is life. I mean, music is all around us. When you walk, there's a certain type of rhythm.
Absolutely.
When you speak, I
Yes.
listen to the intonation of our voices. If you listen to, and it's easier to do if you don't know another language. You hear,
Right. Yeah.
as a talker,
Yeah.
that's
And that's a very West African rhythm, but
Yeah.
there's many. That's
Yes,
more like a
yes,
Fulani type of thing. But you hear like
Yes.
Mandinka speak, it's very different.
There
You know what I mean? In Nigeria, it's
Yeah.
very different than it is in
Yes.
Ghana or in
Yeah.
Senegal or something like that.
Yes.
That's
Yes. Yes.
Nigeria is very different, especially
Yeah,
in the
they're
north.
very-
Boom, dum, 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 dum,
very
dum,
aggressive,
bum.
yeah.
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 Like, man.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
And then you
It's a
find
whole
out, what did he
different
say? And he's like, oh, he was asking me if there's going to be, if I made the bread. Be like, dang, I thought you guys were arguing.
That's so true. Languages do that, man. But that's the beautiful thing. I love languages just to hear. And a lot of times, if I don't know it, I just listen to the cadence of it.
Didn't
and the
you
melody
start
of
singing
it.
because you started by like mimicking people's voices?
Yeah.
And then that
Al
transferred
Green
over?
was the guy. Well, I would mimic it. I would mimic my family. My uncle come over. Come over. He had this real gravelly voice and this real bellowing laugh kind of thing. And then my aunts were over there, and they'd be real high, and so I mimic that. But as far as musically, Al Green was like 15 different people inside of one person. I'm like, what? He'd be down there and it's doing all. I'm like, what? Who is that? I didn't know what I was doing. I just thought it was fun. So I'd get the broom, play my air guitar, that kind of thing. And I guess I was mimicking these tones. As I was mimicking, what I was doing was I was training my voice. I didn't know it. I just was doing this all the time. You know what I mean? And it just became a thing. So, fast forward when I got to high school, they had a recording studio in there. I started to experiment with songs and, putting together things, with the keyboard and the drum machine and my vocal. And for sure, when I started stacking vocals and that kind of thing, I felt like I definitely was meeting myself for the first time. I was like, oh, that's what I sound like. Wow, that's crazy. Oh, so I can do this and I can just follow, or I can do this, or I can make this vowel here. And okay. So I was just discovering me in another way. But to hear yourself back like that for the first time, it was a whole other world. It was a new world. It was I'm out there in space, man, and it's never ended. I'm still exploring, and I'm so glad that I'm still interested in what I'm doing. That I'm glad that the business hasn't spoiled me in a way. It's come close, because it can be really crazy. You know what I mean?
When you talk about Pops and like just knowing about your father, like I've seen you stay the course and stick to your principles and what you believe in from the very beginning, even before I knew you. Like when we lived in Michigan, and when I was coming into 10th grade, we moved to Minneapolis. And I remember Chris Rock had that bit where he was like, ain't no black people in Minnesota. It's like Prince and Kirby Puckett. And I was like, no, mint condition is there. Like I remember thinking like, it can't be that bad because mint condition is there.
That's hilarious.
You know what I mean? So when me and you started
really?
hanging out and traveling and stuff like that,
Yeah.
it's weird because like we were so comfortable that I quickly moved through that, like, yo, this is freaking Stokley right now. You know what I mean?
Wow,
I moved through it
really?
really quickly because we're so, because you're so
Yeah.
personable. And we started to speak in the same language all the way. But
man.
that was one of the main things for me. And, it's deep that speaking about drums, about the drums specifically, like there's a very white supremacist thing that happened in the music industry in America where they put the drums in the back like they're not important. You know what I'm saying? Because this idea of just like that's something that's just in the background. You just keep time. You're unimportant. You're not the. But in traditional music, whether we're talking about African music or Arab music or a lot of especially griots and storytellers and singers and poets and people that perform and recite as like a spiritual practice, it's very common to see a person play a drum and sing, to be the singer and the drummer.
That's right.
Whether they're playing that like duff or they're like the brothers in South America that sit on that box looking drum. What's that thing called?
The cajon.
To be able to sit on that joint and tell the story and play the drum at the same time.
When I'm traveling now, I have the drums on the side, almost in the front, but they're kind of, it's sing very well, because that was one thing I was like, you know what? The drums need to be, this is part of, it's funny that you say that, because that was part of my, the vision of it. And I was thinking like, why is that? I always felt like I had a front seat, like being a lead singer right now is really interesting because the drummer that was in back, I'm able to telegraph what everybody was doing. I understood everybody's position because no matter what instrument you played, whether it's harmony, or melodic, it all has to come from, you have to have some rhythm with it. You know what I mean? You have to put it, it's kind of like everything has its spot. Even in space. Space is an area as well. You know what I mean? So everything has a pulse. It just depends on where you put it. And I felt like that being in the back of the room, being able to see what the drummers, I'm seeing what the singer's doing, what the horn player's doing, guitar player, keyboard, bass player. And I knew I could but because the drummer, he controls the time and controls the dynamics, really. How loud someone's going to be, how fast. So he's kind of like the pace setter, setting the time. And to me, it just was an amazing place to be. I was taking in all of the melody, all the harmony. And I think it's just a very powerful area if you use it right. Some people, it's like you got to take that chair very seriously, which I did. And my percussion upbringing definitely helped sustain me and then helped with the discipline. Because when you play West African music and you playing with dancers, it's an African drum course and everybody has their part and you stick to that part. And then the master drummer is watching what the lead dancers doing, whoever's dancing at the time. The rest of the time, everybody else, your shoulders are bleeding because you're sitting there playing a rhythm for like 30 minutes, and you stick. But you learn that inside of that rhythm, there's life. You know what I mean? So all that discipline is a really powerful place to be. So it was a world within a world for me. It wasn't just playing drums. It was kind of a spiritual prayer a lot of times. You know what I mean? So it just comes from something that you align yourself with. And it was a God thing after I just straight up. So I really learned that. When you talk about roots and the earth and everything, you talk about pops. This is what I was taught. So it's bringing that back to him and my parents. They're very rooted in that. They're also rooted in connectivity, connecting with people and making sure that, which is what soul is to me. People always talk about, what is soul? Is it a beat? Is it funk? It's just connectivity to me. You know what I mean? It's just that connecting one soul to another person, human being, or an animal, whatever. Everything has a soul to it. So, yeah, man. But he, I think that bringing it back to that, to Pops, he, those principles and those early things, whether he knew a lot of it was intentional as far as what he was teaching. Some of it was just like he knew he was in the area and knew I was going to get something from it. So I'm able to put it and funnel it through my own self. And this is how it comes out. So definitely kudos. And I always tell him all the time, it's like, man, you just can't help it, man.
Just teaching all the time. And the thing that I've noticed, and I haven't been around him a whole lot. There are others that have definitely spent way more time. But when I met him, I had just I moved to Minneapolis, become a Muslim. And there was like an African-American study group. I went to Cooper High School. And I don't know if you remember Kelly Day, big brother Kelly Day.
Of course. Yeah. Good friend.
May he rest in peace. Yeah,
Yes,
man.
rest in peace.
So
Yeah.
Kelly was the head of this program, and he used to bring Elder Mahmoud in, and he would bring Spike Moss in, and he would bring Floyd from the gym, and all of these men would come through.
Wow.
It was actually funny because we had an election. It was like we're going to elect a president, vice president, secretary. And he said, we're not going to run for specific roles. Whoever gets the most votes is the president. Whoever gets the second most is vice president. Third most is the secretary. So he called me in. He said, I want you to come 10 minutes early for the meeting today. Kelly did. So I show up. He was like, wow, you got the most votes. And I was like, oh, okay. You know you can't be the president of this damn group, right? He was like, give me the secretary. Like, all right, understood.
That's like, hilarious.
Amazing. So one day your pops was in there, and I'm asking him about his name, you know, because it's a Muslim name. You know, it's the name of a Muslim. It's an Arabic name, a West African, know, scholar who was a Muslim. And so I'm asking him, are you Muslim? And da-da-da, and I'm telling him all this stuff. And he just started asking me questions and doing things just basically to what I came. It was really intense when he was doing it because he was dismantling the things I thought I knew. But what I realized is that he didn't want me to just become stuck in a particular worldview or in a particular frame. You know what I mean? And I saw him do that with multiple people who came up saying different things. Someone would come and they would really specifically be on a particular platform. And I could see him saying, okay, yes, to what you're saying, but then what about this and what about that and what about, you know, just expanding the worldview to make people less comfortable in the little bit of the truth that they got. So it just really felt like the desire to learn and to connect and to grow and to recognize the beauty and the limitations and all of these different ideologies. And it's a very universalist approach, you know what I mean, that I thought was really dope.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing that, when people speak to him, I think he has the public personas that he just locked into one thing. You know what I mean? I remember asking him a long time, it's like, how do you know so much? I must have been about 12 or something. So why do you know so much? You know about Black history. I mean, he said, actually, my focus, you know, coming up was more so world history. I studied a lot of European, you know, and the Africanisms and the Blackness was in living. I was like, which I thought was pretty unique. His experiences. So again, it goes back to when I say I took what did I take away? It's like I take away. It's just like you say, don't be stuck and just have this universal approach. You know, it's like, yeah, I studied, you know, Europe and world history, but looking at how Black folks move, how Africans move, and the connectivity between the two. You know, that's the thing I paid attention to because he always had something positive to say. Like be at a meeting or something. I remember, you know, a few times it'd be trying to figure out how to do this. Everybody wanted to get to a certain place, but didn't know how to get there. So everybody's bickering and that kind of thing. And he always had an approach of like, you know, coming right down the middle is like, you know, you're not right. You're not wrong for feeling this way over here. And you're not wrong for feeling this way over here. So how do we bring this together? Because we both passionately want the same things. We all are in here trying to figure out how to get to that up there, you know, and to see this example over and over, and you just gave one, you know, that is very true. And that's kind of where my heart is, where I saw that. So bringing people together, because that's just the polar opposite of like what's happening right now. They're trying to pit people against each other to, you know, keep an eye off the ball, you know, and to the remedy for that is to bring people together. So I've seen that all my life, and I've seen that from a very young age. And I guess that's why I am always at the center of me, I am a collaborator. That's why I was in a band for so long. You know, comfortable with that and spreading what it is and my gift. I'm clearly aware of my gifts and my energy, and to use other people's energy and use my own. And we just kind of stir it around and try to make some things happen. You know, that's where, you know, I'm comfortable. Even now, you know, it's like, I don't care who you see in the limelight, you need people to help facilitate you to the point, whatever your vision is, you know what I mean? So, yeah, I mean, these gifts and things that I've seen, I mean, these examples are very near and dear. And it's interesting you're asking about it, because it's like, I guess I've never talked about it in this way, which is, but I leave it to you. Of course, you're going to have some thought provoking questions.
Well, it's just amazing. Like I said, the way that you have stuck to your guns, but you've always done it quietly. That like anybody who knows the way your training and the way that the things that were impressed upon you, to see you to hold on to having a band when that wasn't popular. Like when you all when you all started, I mean, it was all singing groups. It was all Boys to Men and H-Town and Jodeci and Shy and like all of the every time, it's like, well, if black people are a group, then there's going to be 6 mics and not an instrument in sight.
Right.
You know what I mean? And everybody's going to be,
yeah.
So
we
to stick
came
to
up,
that.
yeah. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
But then also the content. I mean, the content of your songs, like I always looked at you and at Mint Condition like the equivalent of the hip hop that I love the most. That really sticks to like, we're dope. We're going to encapsulate the entirety of this tradition. Like if I look at like Gangstar or Pete Rock and CL Smooth or Public Enemy, more so Gangstar and Pete Rock and CL Smooth. I look at Mint Condition that way. But then also everything that we do is going to promote dignity. All of the ways that women are spoken to and spoken about, they're always spoken to as full human beings. You know what I mean? They're always loved and honored and respected. And you know what I'm saying? If you listen to some of the other groups that I mentioned, and no shade or tea or any of that, but if you listen to them, they're just like, I want to freak you and I want to sex you, you rub your body. It's all basically like, it's a very, you remind me of my Jeep kind of situation.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Whereas if you think about, Pretty Brown Eyes, it's like, come on, man. We all know that Pops had the folks reading The Bluest Eye. You know what I mean? So that's cutting against white standards of European beauty standards. You know what I mean? Pretty Brown Eyes. How about that? You know what I'm saying? So I'm saying, and this is 20 years ago at this point, like more than 20 years ago.
More than 20, yeah.
And just asking a question, what kind of man would I be? What kind, I'm saying we just had Cornel West on the show a couple last week.
I saw a preview. I got to get to see that.
His whole thing is, very short time between the womb and the tomb. What kind of person are you going to be before you die? You know what I'm saying? Like that's. I love
you got it. You got it.
Oh, absolutely no, absolutely no, brother Ali. Yes, the absolute. But brother, though, what do you make though, brother? But just like to ask that type of question at that particular moment in culture, what kind of man would I be? Not like, can I, you know what I'm saying? Because you're being hit on. So it's not a question of, do I have access to women's bodies? Can I have all the sex I want? What kind of man would I be? And you don't answer the question, but the question in itself is such a statement.
Yeah. And that's what I love about it. It's like there's not an answer. It's just, it's for the listener to figure out.
And that's your dad.
To wrestle with that.
That's your dad all day. The question is enough. You know what I'm saying? The question that unsettles that unsettles your sleepwalking. To just think about like, yes, okay, yeah, you can get nice things and you can be an attractive person, you have nice clothes, you can get attention from women, but what kind of person are you going to be?
And I guess that speaks to, because that's a big up and big shout out to Lawrence Waddell, author, that song, just because, again, the community at that time, just growing up and just have that kind of is what was bubbling. So just having, this is how powerful people around the community having that influence, because you start thinking that way. And it's how we pretty much were thinking, and Lawrence is definitely an intellectual and, has, Pops and has so many, discussions with him and the whole band. It's like Pops was always involved in, trying to, some of our earlier gigs, that kind of thing. Just, what do you guys, he would tease us a lot. It's like, you guys going to leave the fight in the gym. When you going to have a week? Because we would rehearse a lot, rehearse in the basement, rehearse. Didn't have a gig when we were, young. It's like, yeah, y'all going to leave the fight in the gym. All this rehearsing, when you going to play? Yeah, but, having that and spreading that kind of love and just that kind of thoughtfulness about it. So that's how a song like that could absolutely, be born out of that. And so, yeah, man, this is, again, that's how powerful, these moments are, when you see a person who knows something and spreading that knowledge, spreading that energy. You never know how it's going to come out and how it's going to affect, Uh, I, th- I think that I'm pretty sure that everybody, all the friends that I had were influenced, whether it be, my mom's cooking and, or getting the word from pops and that kind of thing, even when they didn't want to. There was something that was always said that they'll always take away. Some of these people I see to this day, they have families. They're like, man, we were knuckleheads back in the day, but that, having your pops there, your family just being there, a lot of times was just, that was one thing. And then just then you leaving you with something to take away and to think about. Whether you thought about it then, at some point in your life, sooner than later, it snapped you back into that. It's like, oh, wow, I remember that. I just experienced this in this. He said this was coming. You know what I mean? So you have to wrestle with that kind of thing. But
it's amazing, especially in that time period. There was just this kind of like trope that we heard so often about like black dads aren't around, and you know what I mean. This idea that like black families are headed by women and the men are not. My experience was exactly the opposite. Like all of the people that taught me the things that I tell my children to this day about being responsible and being loving and being there. And, so when I think about hearing what you're saying reminds me of both Chuck D and Rakim. That like Rakim was asking him, like, how come you never cussed? And similar thing, like he always spoke. The meanest thing he said about a woman in a Rakim song. It's the song where he samples, I want to win, I want to know what's on your mind. Okay, he's like trying to holler at this woman. She turned away, no play. I said, okay, you don't really look good. I hope you have a bad day. Meanest thing he ever said to a woman on that. This is wild, like NWA were having fantasies about killing prostitutes and sex workers, and you know what I'm saying? And I was asking him about this, and your music has always been at this not only high like lyrical level, but also the content. And he was saying his mother was a jazz musician, and he was like, my dad was always, we would make music in the basement, and he would be sitting at the top of the steps, and he wouldn't come in the session, but he would listen, and I always knew that my father was just present and hearing everything I was saying, so I couldn't say anything that would dishonor him. And Chuck the same way, Chuck D the same way, like his father having such a presence in that music. So
it makes a difference, man. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And just your ability to remain so firm in what matters to you, and to do it in a way that's so constant and consistent and dignified. There's something just really, there's like a certain type of like masculinity that's steady and quiet. You know what I mean? That doesn't make a big fuss about it. You know what I mean?
Right. The thing that I loved about what we did and do is it would be considered like, boy, that ain't too strong, for a dude to say. It's like, but it showed the vulnerability of a man. It doesn't make him any less of a man. It just makes him, he's fully aware of all of his emotions, all of his feelings, and expresses them in a way that most people, or most guys probably can, but, they have this social thing, this thing that says that if you do this, then you're a little bit softer, that kind of thing. But I think that was one of our superpowers. You know what I mean? Being able to say that in that certain type of way and have people get it. You know what I mean? So for you to come in, it's like it's evident, and we say, hey man, that really struck me. How you all really presented that, because you don't really hear that, because that's not the popular thing at the moment. And then that's the thing we kept doing, and we would deliver that over and over. We really got pretty good at it. So.
In hip hop at that time, there was a cohort. There was like, it was almost like there was a circle of artists that were very clearly intentional about, sampling jazz and making sure that the content was, elevating, even if it was fun. You know what I mean? But I know that we have mutual friend in Ali Shahi Muhammad, and so you have some of the biggest rap groups at that time on the hip hop side of things were that way. Like I said, Gang Starr and Pete Rock and CL Smooth and Public Enemy and the whole Native Tongue thing. So that was like one of the acceptable ways to be in hip hop music. It feels like that wasn't happening as much in the R&B space though.
We were pressured so much to like, y'all need to have something sexy. But at the time, I remember like a song, So Fine. We had a guitar solo in it. It's like, what y'all doing with this guitar in this here? It's like, when's the last time you heard guitar? It's like, have you heard of the Isley Brothers? I mean, have you? I'm like, and that's somebody who's really stuck in caring too much about enforced trends and styles at the time. You know what I mean? And a lot of people are. I get it. To make a buck, they got to, if Colgate has their tartar control, then Crest has to have a tartar control competition. You know what I mean? So I get it, but why not try to do something different? Stay the course. At some point, those folks are going to get tired of everybody sounding the same. Why not come get some original thought? You know what I mean? And then make that a thing. So we were kind of like that, but of course, people that were worried about profits and loss, are worried about profits and loss. They're not. We can't be concerned about what y'all thinking and trying to elevate the culture. You know what I mean? I'm being facetious, but
I mean,
something like that. You know what I mean?
It's like that's like one degree of exaggeration,
right.
but I mean, it's basically what
Right.
it is. And you think about the fact that, like, say, like, okay, we're gonna have you all are gonna be singing, and but we're gonna take all of the sensitivity out of it. You know what I mean? It's like, what the hell are we doing then? That's the basis of what we're doing. You know what I mean? And then, so when I came along, it's like, rhyming is like at a time where it's like, yeah, you're going to stand up here and say words for 4 straight minutes, but we don't really want any substance. You know what I mean? So like sing without any sensitivity and speak without substance. And you're just supposed to accept that.
Yeah, no. And the whole thing was, we always considered ourselves a healthy alternative for everything. Like, I love everything. When it's time to turn up, I may not want to listen to us. There's a time for everything under the sun.
Absolutely.
But we were a healthy balance.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
I just felt like a lot of time, and not like I think there were a lot of other groups like us. But the thing is, again, dumbing us down as a culture, and that's a whole different aspect, a whole different conversation. But there is something to that. So that is the thing that rises to the top to keep people on that kind of schooling, that kind of mentality. But we just thought we were a healthy admixture to an otherwise, market that was oversaturated with, some of it was nonsense. It was just, I don't mind nonsense. Sometimes you want some non-thing. You just want some dumb music, but you can't have dumb music all the time.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't be all one thing all the time. We're human beings, so we need that. So it gets to be too much. So I really felt we were, like I said, a healthy admixtures. Like, we were the balance, the antithesis to that kind of thinking. You know what I mean? And it's not like I think it just came natural to us. Not saying that like, oh, we're geniuses trying to, like, this was natural. Again, we came out of that kind of environment. You know what I mean? So it's not no putting on, no airs, and that I think that's what resonated and still resonates for people to this day.
We are beyond grateful on this podcast to be sponsored and supported by Zika Foundation. They really have done so much to help us get this thing off the ground, because they believe in the importance of these stories and these conversations, and that it's actually related to the humanitarian work that they do around the world. The Zika Foundation's approach to humanitarian work is really rooted in the fullness of humanity, in the full richness of what a human being is and what they deserve, and the fact that some of us who have enough and most of us have extra, even though we might not recognize that to be the case, that it's really an honor for us to be able to share and contribute to people who are not who don't find themselves in the same circumstances that we're in. And it really is something that's really humanizing for us to be able to do that. Zika Foundation operates in every region of the world, all around the globe, in Central and South America, and North America, in Africa, and Asia, and the Middle East, in Eastern Europe, all throughout the world, working with communities on what they need most. And so we've talked in the past a lot about their project to support orphans, because it's really groundbreaking. But they do amazing work with providing safe water for people that are experiencing, food insecurity, people that need help and resources in the way of education and all of the things that human beings need to live out fully human lives. And so Zika Foundation does incredible work all over the world. Ramadan is coming up, so for the Muslims, it's a time when we really expand upon our giving. But it's a Muslim-led organization that doesn't only serve Muslims, and they don't proselytize. Both of those are extremely important points to me. They also have people on the ground to ensure quality control and to ensure that the resources actually get to the people that they're meant for, and that it's done in a way that's full of dignity and respect and honor and love and care and concern and actually gratitude on behalf of the giver. It's like we need to be deeply grateful for the fact that we're allowed to do this. And so Zika Foundation is just really incredible, and the work that they do is really incredible. I only stand with these organizations if I'm able to have real talk with the people who make decisions, because so many times there's so many organizations that want to do good and they end up doing harm. That happens a lot. We're human. We live in the world. But what I found is that with some people, if they make a mistake or if they go off the rails or if they fall short of what they intend to do, you try to talk to them and they shut you out. You try to tell the truth. You try to ask important questions, and they start protecting their funding and their reputation and all this stuff. And you become a pariah. And I've become a pariah in several spaces because it's like, wait a minute, we're hurting people. What's going on? You know what I mean? Wait, no, this isn't what we said we were going to do. And they're like, okay, but you need to be quiet because you're going to mess this up. It's like, no. If we're sincere about this work, we can have these conversations and we can actually address what's going right and what's going wrong. Amna Mirza, who is one of the amazing leaders at Zika Foundation, is somebody I met because we were both met at working with a different organization in the Muslim community, and I was expressing to her that, like, hey, this is not okay. It was their treatment of artists. And me as an artist who most of my support's not in the Muslim community, I can speak up in those situations, because if they uninvite me, I just go back to rocking the Hard Rock Hotel, which I'm doing tonight in Lake Tahoe, and playing where I play. But for these artists that perform mostly for the Muslim community, they can't necessarily do that. So I'm in a situation where I have to say something. And so I had a conversation like this with my sister Amna, and her response let me know that, like, no, this is a sincere person that's here for the work, that's here to actually do good and to have a positive impact and to leave things better than she found them. So that was my introduction to my sister Amna. And in working with her and talking with her and hearing the questions that she's asked and the changes that she's ushered in, along with Zika Foundation had a great reputation before her. And that's why I think they chose her, and they're building upon that. So I feel very good about giving my money to Zika Foundation, about partnering with them, about sharing my platform with them. And I'm really grateful that they're so supportive of this podcast. So head to Zakat US, Zakat US. Follow them on social media. You can also go to their website and just check out all of the amazing work that they do. And just look at it with the idea of, like, is there something here that speaks to me where I can put some paint where it ain't, where I can add some of the abundance that I've been able to, whether it's a little bit or a lot. It all adds up, and it all goes a long way to help people and to also help us become our best selves. Zika Foundation. I'm really honored and grateful and excited to be partnering with my dear friend and somebody that I consider to be a mentor and a healer, Resmaa Menakem. Resmaa is a therapist and an educator based out of the Twin Cities. He is a therapist that is really well versed in a lot of things, but his focus is on trauma and the way that trauma interacts with our bodies and the way that our bodies start to respond to one another. He did amazing work supporting troops in Afghanistan. Resmaa is a New York Times best-selling author. He has an amazing book called My Grandmother's Hands that talks about racialized trauma, and it even provides exercises that people can do to just become more aware of what's happening in our bodies around the supercharged nature of race. And he talks to black bodies, white bodies, and he also talks about and to people in law enforcement and the relationships that we have with each other based on generations of experiences that we've had. Resma is someone that I've seen as a client, as a patient. My son and I saw him together, and then I also did some sessions with Resma myself. But he offers something to the conversation about race and about America as a whole that is missing. It's very unique, and I feel like his perspective is really, really needed. And so I'm just really grateful to be partnering with him. Resma has a new book coming out on April the 12th called The Quaking of America, and it's an embodied guide to dealing with the racial situation that we find ourselves in, to trying to avoid, the impending doom, the gulf that's the divide that's happening, to try to help heal that. And then also to survive the fracturing that does happen. So this is something that Resma is offering in a spirit of loving healing, but also in deep truth telling. And his advice, his witness, his expertise, and he actually is really important, but he gives really valuable solutions that are not easy, and they're not sexy, and they're not quick, they're not fast. But I believe in that what he's offering to this conversation is profoundly important. He's been on Dr. Phil, he's been on Oprah, he's been on The Breakfast Club. Charlemagne the God had him on his show called The God's Honest Truth. And we're really happy. And we're looking forward to having Resma on this podcast. And want you to go to resmaa.com, RESMAA.com, pre-order the book. Read it, check it out. He's got seminars, he's got workshops. Follow him on social media. Really happy and honored to be partnering with Resma Menikin. One of the many things that I love so much about the journey I've been able to have as a musician, as a speaker, as a learner, as an educator, as a community organizer and activist, so much of it is really the beauty of creating community around authentic messaging and around authentic work. It's really beautiful to me that I've never been beholden to somebody whose money is first, to somebody who is like, we have to hit the lowest common denominator to raise the bottom line. The dollar is king. I've never had to be in a situation like that. And not only does that make me free, but it also creates community around what we're saying, because I get to say things that aren't popular. I get to say things that don't make me look cool or make me look like a hero. I get to talk about things that aren't going to be supported by corporations who have to look at dollars first, that have to look at numbers first. I've always been in situations where quality can be king instead of quantity. And it's really important to me. And that brings about community because people hear and see reflections of themselves. Not that everybody that listens to me are half-blind Muslim albinos, but like people hear like, oh, this is a person that's really exploring himself and expressing himself. And I'm hearing that some of my secrets aren't unique to me. As a listener, some of my secrets, the guy on the stage feels the same way, and everybody's clapping and cheering and crying and singing along and dancing with me. And that's beautiful. That's the greatest gift of all. I wouldn't trade anything for that. So part of what allows that to be the case is that we have an outlet for that. And so brotherali.com, my website, is the outlet for that. So you can go there, you can see all the information on our upcoming events, all the information about podcasting. Also in that we have merchandise offerings there too. We have a super dope Uncle Sam goddamn jacket. It's ill, my favorite thing I've ever made. I don't think it's on the website yet, but it'll be up there soon. We're selling it only at the merch table on the tour right now, but keep an eye out for that. But we also have a section called Join, which is essentially about a caravan where we invite people to support and then also engage in ways that, we put this podcast up for free. We put our music up for free. Anybody can stream it for free wherever they are. But for people that really want to engage on a deeper level, we offer options for that. So there are different kind of like levels and ways to engage. The uppermost tier of that actually gives people access and invites them into a private Slack channel where not only do I go in there and record voice notes and give updates and share, and I share stuff here that like I already talk too much on this podcast. It's really about the guests. But being able to share so much is a beautiful thing in that space. But then also the people that are involved in that, trailblazers aspect of our caravan is like people are really building community. People are supporting each other and hearing what people are going through. And it's a slow process. You know, there's a ancient proverb that they just say African, but Africa's huge. What part of Africa? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So the group work is not fast work, but it's really sustainable, and it really feeds the wholeness of who we are. So go to brotherali.com, check out the shows, check out the merch offerings, check out the music, check out the podcast. There's also a section there if you want to, you know, request an interview, a speaking engagement. If you want me to supply beats for what you're doing, or ask for a verse, there's ways to inquire about all that stuff if you go to the booking section. But the part that I really want to convey the most is the caravan, the section called Join. So head to brotherali.com and get down with this movement. When there's always this feeling that mint condition, like you all had huge, like within the black community and anybody that loves black music, like these are enormous records that defined moments, the same as anybody else. But there's always this idea that mint never crossed over. And to me, what that always felt like is, I mean, by crossover, they mean like appeal to white people.
Right.
And because of the way that things have been set up and arranged, there's like only certain ways that white people in mass, you know, there's like white people that listen to black music and, you know, as that's their thing. And actually everyone's listening to black music, but they actually listen to it played by black people.
Right.
That hasn't been stolen and refiltered.
Yeah, it's everywhere. You can't, you know, hip hop is as you know. Yeah.
I mean, there's not an American music form that's not a black music form. There's just literally not one. So, you know, but this idea that like in order to cross over, there are only certain ways to be black. There are only certain ways that the white mainstream structure as a large conglomerate will accept black men to be, or black men and women to be. And so like if you're not one of those, if you don't fit in one of those frameworks, then it's just like, yeah, we don't really know what to do with you. And I wonder, like, part of the ability to stay the course, how much of that was having Jimmy and Terry like on your side?
Really, I think, again, it was an extension of our community, because Jimmy and Terry are from South and North Side. You know, they're around. You talk about people like Spike Moss and, you know, The Way. And they were, you know, students, you know, and who became mentors themselves, you know. So, again, I think it was all of our environment. And I think what they saw, you know, Sounds of Blackness. You know, the Sounds of Blackness, that name, you know, I believe, as the story goes, was inspired. The name was inspired by Pops. You know, Pops was, you know, Ted McAllister, Gary Hines, director of Sounds of Blackness, McAllister alumni. And yeah, there was something he said, I don't know if it was in a speech or, and there was something he said, Sounds of Blackness, and I think that inspired the group's name.
Amazing.
I didn't know if you knew that little fun fact, but
no, that's amazing.
I think it's just more so the environment. So I think, you know, the signing of, you know, Mint to Flight Time Perspective Records is, they saw in us what they saw in themselves, you know, coming from a band. Because, you know, you talked about earlier about, you know, singing groups. And I think if you look back, the 60s, Temptations, that kind of thing. Well, there's an explosion of bands in the 70s. Brass Construction, Ohio Players, Earth, Wind and Fire. I mean, the list goes on, even from Rock Journey, you know, so many different bands. I mean, horn bands, big bands, Cameo. This is what we saw. So we're 70s kids growing up, it's like, oh, wow, Tower Power, all these groups, man. Wow, all this energy is amazing. Sly and the Family Stone. You know, James Brown had a band. You know, it was just a thing. So we were inspired to do that. And then seeing, you know, folks like, you know, when Prince was brewing around here, you know, doing his stuff locally, that was somebody I actually saw, you know, and seen him develop and become what he became. And how explosive is that? I mean, you got people from your backyard. So I think Jimmy and Terry were a part of that, all of that energy, you know. So by the time we signed with Perspective, you know, they saw themselves in us, and they were like, you know, whatever y'all want to do. Because we were thinking that they would have, you know, just their thumb on everything, you know, but that was their genius. It's like, you know, we know what you can do. We're going to sign people who really know what they're doing, you know, or think if they don't have it all together, we can see that they have potential and they're going to grow and figure it out. And I think that's what they saw in us. They came to a show. We had a showcase of First Avenue, and First song we used to sing back then. We used to open with Pretty Brown Eyes back then. It's an old song. We used to do it like way back then,
You said that was on the
And we
demo,
would, we
and
would start
people.
off the show.
Wow. Da, da,
Because
da.
we just,
Did it always start
exactly,
with the
'cause
synth horn joint?
we still, because that's the thing. We get people's attention. It's there's no song. We like, bam, bam. What the hell? They drop their drink. Bam, bam. What is going on? Paco, paco. Just out of nowhere. And but it would get people's attention. It's like, oh man, that's we got to keep that. And they said from the first note, yeah, y'all got a deal, man. And so speaking with them, they were like, what do you all want to do? It's like, well, we would love to produce our own albums. We think we would know how to do that. We were in school and we have some experience with studio work and that kind of thing. And they were like, well, we would like to at least produce half the album. Well, they're like, you can do the whole damn thing if you want.
Amazing.
We were like, wow. So
and it's
it was
Jimmy
just
Jam
allowing
and Terry Lewis.
Yeah.
And this is not like
us to
SOS
discover
band
stuff.
Jimmy and Terry. This is like Janet Jackson, Jimmy and Terry.
This is all of it, man. They encompass. I mean, they are just amazing human beings. That's. I mean, I tell them to this day. It's like, man, you all are such a gift, man. To the community, the music community, of course, here, but I mean, to the world, what they've given the world. And what I love about them, just as men, as human beings, man. I love being around them. It's just always, something to learn. At this point, it's funny that I won't say they learn things about themselves, but I think they do through other people because seeing themselves through other people's eyes, it's like, wow, I didn't know we affected you like that or anybody like, because you just never know what somebody's going through in their life, but they let us do our thing, man. And I think that was the brilliance of it, to let us grow and explore and discover, and then what they were to us, we became to other people. Is what, the music now, after Pretty Brown Eyes, now 30 years late, something like that is, TikTok crazy, going nuts right now. It's 800 and something, almost 1 billion views.
Allahu Akbar.
Somebody took that and, sped it up and, they have all these memes and everything. I don't know if you checked it out, but yeah. So, I mean, yeah, it's a gift. It just keeps rolling, man,
And so that's the first song that grabbed them, but that song was on your demo tape that you sent to all of the labels, and everybody was like, I don't hear a hit. And then after it blew up, after somebody believed in you, they're like, well, if that song would have been on the demo, we would have signed you. But the song was on the...
remember I was telling you?
Yeah, it was on the demo.
You got a good memory, man. That's true. So if that would have been on there it was on there. We had, as a matter of fact, the 4 songs that we had on the demo are on the first album. One was Are You Free? One was, I think, Do You Want It? Another one was Pretty Brown Eyes, and a song called Out of Time, Out of Mind. Yeah, those 4 are on the first album, yeah.
But not only did they see the vision, but they also really had almost like a Motown style of like artist development. Because you think about like how diverse the label was. Like, so you got Sounds of Blackness, Mint Condition, but then also Crush, King's English, Low Key.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like it's really like there's no 2 groups that are the same in that thing.
That's true. They were using Motown as a model for sure. I could see that, just with because we had definitely they went the music. What is it when we had the publicists come in? Just kind of a mock interview training sessions, that kind of thing. How to give an interview, that kind of thing. We would kind of just do our own choreography, that kind of thing. But, they had spaces to do all that stuff there. So it was definitely modeled after that whole thing. They wanted us to be, one of the things they said to us very early is like, yeah, we want you to be great musicians, that's great, but to also be good businessmen. They always took care of business, and we learned through watching them, their successes, and, later on finding out some of the things that didn't make it and what they did to, overcome it. You know what I mean? If they had some trials and some challenges, but you would never know, because that's the whole thing about it. You're supposed to, water off a duck's back kind of thing, and you just keep moving. So that was an example of like, they say failure teaches you the most. Looking at, things that didn't make it big, or there's certain songs or something kind of thing. No, you keep going, man. They just wrote so much. And it's like, you just got to be relentless with it. You're a prolific cat. I mean, that's everything can't be top 5 or top 10, top 20. But, I take I liken my thinking to what Prince once said. It's like, look, man, because it's true. You can't really control once it's outside of your body, which I consider a success. Once it's out of me and I get it out, it's successful. You don't know what promotion, marketing, and with all the manipulation that you can do, radio, you just don't know how it's going to affect somebody and what it's going to make them feel like. Are they going to want to taste that piece of chicken again? Do they have that right kind of aftertaste? You know what I mean? I feel like that about the music. It's like it might leave wrong taste in the mouth. You know what I mean? Or sound in the ear. Something it's not going to make you want to come back for some reason. Well, not for some reason. I think it was just very calculated that we learned how to do that to make you come back wanting more. But we weren't for sure. At the same time, it's like you can practice so much and have these patterns like here's what makes success, but you still don't know. So for me, again, it's just like once it's out, it's successful.
That's the success.
Then, that's a success.
The fact that like you have this thing inside it that the divine has given you as a gift, and you have to nurture it, you have to develop it, you have to serve it, and then once you offer it to the world, like that is the success.
Absolutely.
That's incredible, man. Like that's such a
and not to say that because some people be like, oh, that's bullshit, you got to make some money out here. Yeah, that's true. There's a time and place for everything.
Sure.
And of course money it's not everything, but it makes things a lot easier. It's accessible. It makes you have some financial, you have a certain amount of freedom that comes along with that. So that's great too, if you can get to that. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying from a totally artistic, and it gives you some psychic rewards, and you feel good in your soul.
And it keeps you sane. Like that's the thing that's going to sustain somebody's sanity for the long haul. You know what I mean? Because like I think about like, so you all's first like 3 records were like smash records, and then the 4th one, which is a dope album, didn't have the same type of response. And then it seemed like
Life's Aquarium, was that? Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it seemed like it was never quite the same as what it was during that time period. And so if your gauge of your value and your worth as a creative, as an artist, as a person is related to that outward success, you would almost think that like my best days are behind me. What's the purpose of still going on?
Oh man.
Whereas like some of the most amazing music you've made is on your new record.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's like all the independent stuff we did after. That's interesting because we were at Elektra Records, the biggest deal we had at the time, and it's some amazing music, I thought. But the business was changing as well. MP3s were coming in, which is a precursor to all the streaming and stuff that we see now. But it's just different ways to do music, and things were changing a little bit. The touring was a little bit different at that point. The budgets were they were changing. Some of the inflated budgets that we used to have, it was just, some things were being shut. And one huge thing I think happened too is like when people see bands, especially when we talk about live, they're like, they see it's a lot of money. You know what I mean? Because it's like, but they don't think it's worth it. But the thing is, we've never been a hard sell. As soon as they see it, they're like, oh, we get it. Right. And that's all we've ever wanted, just a spot, a shot to be like, once you see it, which is what it's all about, live entertainment, live presentation, make you feel something. You're going to leave that room feeling differently than what you came in.
And you're not going to get that feeling somewhere else. You're not going to get that going to a movie. You're not going to get it seeing a basketball game. You're going to, there's a specific feeling that you're going to get at a mint condition show, and you can't get it anywhere else. And because of that, we need what we need in order to make it happen.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So they got it after, and it's the same with what I do now, even on the solo tip, which is still live presentation, and it's just like, there's nothing like that, having that live interaction, seeing that person on the guitar do his thing, or and just anything. It's like when you go and they see you and they see it. I want to see the DJ cutting and scratching that. I used to love that when I used to be b-boy back in the day. In that, it's like that part of it is just, it's everything. It's that interaction, that it's that soul connectivity again.
You think about like the DJ specifically, and when we were talking earlier about you as a drummer, understanding where all of the pieces fit, and then also having the ability to vocalize and to it really made me think about Dilla. Like they got all these books now about Dilla. There's a book specifically called Dilla Time, and I was just thinking about the fact that Dilla had the ability to, first of all, change rhythm, the way that rhythm is understood, but also could arrange all of the music, and everything in the music had its own place, these different elements from records and things like that. But then also he vocalized on top of it, you know what I mean?
Right.
And was really able to lock what he was saying into the rhythm of the whole thing. It's just like one human being an entire composer. It's like, did Quincy do that? Did Quincy also sing on his records?
Right.
I mean, all love to Quincy, greatest probably that ever did it. But but Quincy didn't do what Dilla did. There's something very specific about that ability to coordinate the whole joint and perform it.
It is, and you know what? He's the Quincy of his generation for that. Because why I say that is because nobody did what Quincy did at that time either. It's like, wow, he's not only this great arranger worker, but he played back in the day. I mean, he knows all these parts and has the ability to bring all these things together in the way that he did at that time and change whatever he did at that moment. So Dilla, the same thing. What Dilla did for me is, and for a lot of drummers, he brought forth and made popular to me the things that we were in our head, the things that we play with time down. Any drummer knows what I'm talking about. Just the most backwards, fucked up rhythm we'd always be trying. Me and Chris talk about this, Chris Daddy Dave all the time about. And we would spend a lot of time, he used to live with me, and we would spend all day just backwards, forward. How he used to have this thing Chris did on his phone, his outgoing message, where he would play like a tape was rewinding. It's like, leave a message, and he'd play the beat. Oh, rewind. He'd play backwards. Like, it was crazy. Dilla was the first person I heard is like to really make that whole thing popular and orchestrate it in the way of like what you're talking about. Just the whole swing straight. Drummers would play with that thing, but he brought it together in a way on an MPC and put it together in a way where it was just like,
on a machine.
Oh my Lord. Oh man, I mean, nobody's done that and just changed the whole situation. I mean, where it became a standard. You hear stuff like, D'Angelo, when that first came up, it's like, wow, what is this?
That chicken grease, the claps on that chicken grease. Like,
yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of that, so I mean, it's just amazing. So again, that is the culture rolling forward, because if you remember like the early 90s, the whole, Teddy Riley's thing with the New Jack Swing, the swing came in. The swing was real heavy, and that reminds me of the bebop days, where if you wasn't swinging, you wasn't saying it. I mean, just don't mean to think if ain't that swing, that no truer words. You know what I mean? Dilla was still swinging, you know what I mean? So carrying that thread is rolling through all of us, man. And sometimes we don't even know it. And again, for me, rhythmically, I've always put those things together. Like I can see it's like, is that a 3-2 clave or 2-3 clave? Like when I'm listening to some Jay-Z or something like that. It's so simple, the rhythms. When I listen to like a Dilla or a Jay-Z or anything, or Gang Starr, like these threads are running through and we don't even know it. And it's beautiful. I like that, because that's just God in the room at that point. It's just like the culture is so strong without us even knowing that. When I got a chance to go to Ghana in June, I made some more connections like that. I'm like, oh, wow, I get it. This is real. You know what I mean? I'm like, this is amazing to see the pulse of it, just the little nuances. You know what I mean? I'm like, why? I was like, oh, that's why we do that. Oh man, this is really
amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
and then
man.
you see it in its healthy form before it was tampered with and stolen. And so I go to the Gambia. That's like which is like right in the middle of Senegal. I have my main like sheikh lives in Gambia, so I try to go there every year. And one night we went to this all night. He knew I would want to go. He was just like, Brazari, we go to see some culture tonight. I'm like, all right, cool. So we go to the joint, and like it's this big outdoor gathering, and there are several great like religious teachers speaking, and so they'd be up on the mic, and they're talking, and there's this like big, and it's like 2:00 in the morning, like it's an all night thing, and if the sheikh stops for a second, like he's clearly in the middle of a thought, but if he stopped for a second, like this blind man stood up and started singing, and he's like singing about the sheikh, and he's singing about the Prophet Muhammad and all this stuff, and I'm like, yo, this is ill. And so my sheikh is just looking at me. He was like, because he knew I was going to want to see it, and he was like, you like this? I'm like, yeah. But like
Wow.
women came up and they had like
Wow.
these satin bags full of cash, and they're like throwing it at him. And he's got like his son or some like youth is there with him, picking it up, putting him in his pocket, and they're like throwing money at him. I'm just like, oh, this is ill. Like, this is how this man lives.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And so then he finishes his thing and he sits down, and then the sheikh just picks up speaking again. Like, he's not like, whoa, that was a trip. You know what I mean? He's just like, okay. He was like, members of the council. Like, continue doing this thing. Then he stops again for a second, and somebody else stands up. And then he starts singing, but he's doing a different vibe. And people come up and throw money, and they're throwing money differently depending on how it's making him feel, or how it's making them feel, or what he's talking about. And they have like, they clearly brought these like sacks of money to throw at, and the way that they throw it, and the manner in which and these are women throwing money at men. And it just made me think about the whole making it rain phenomenon, and how just, how it changes when it, what I'm saying, after it's been co-opted and switched up. But
and go ahead.
But it also made me think about, didn't Prince used to come to your gigs when you'd be gigging in town and throw hundreds at you?
Man, yeah, you're like, you and Chappelle go to the same memory school, man.
Oh man.
Like, yeah, there was this place called Jasmine's downtown. We used to go there and play. I used to play with this group, some friends of mine, called Conversation Piece. Shout out to some of the fellas. Yeah, we were down there rocking, man, and they said, Prince is gonna come down. I was like, cool, yeah. Yeah, Stokley playing tonight. Yeah, he's playing on. Come on, okay, cool. He's down there. I knew he was somewhere in the room, but I was whatever. I started singing and playing, whatever the song was. I can't remember. And next thing you know, I start getting these in my head. I'm like, what is going on? Who's throwing stuff? I look over, man. I look down. I was like, oh, that's money. I look like $100 bill. He's over there like, ah. I'm like, what? Who is over there acting a fool over there? I was like, wow, okay. I appreciate it, man.
I mean, you kept it,
oh yeah, he was like, no, it was crumpled up $100 bills. I'm like, yeah. I was like, appreciate it. Thank you, man.
I'll take it.
I use that to rent, for some gas money.
Didn't Morris start out as a drummer before he was a front man?
Yes, funky. Oh my goodness. And I hear him speak about it, not because I always wondered, I didn't hear him a lot, but he's on a lot of those recordings. And his, the guy he would listen to is the guy from Tower of Power, who was amazing, just cutting up them beats like that. It was songs like Squib Cakes, just, oh my Lord, just goes on and on, man. This dude was amazing. It's just escaping his name is escaping me right now. But yeah, he was like that, man. He's like cutting up them beats like that, I was privy to hear a lot of their demos, around earlier before.
Like old time
everything
demos?
Really started. What's that?
Old time demos?
Old time demos, yeah.
Okay.
From, the time and some of the Prince stuff, his board
Prince
tapes
demos, okay.
Yeah, Prince demos and some of the time stuff. And a lot of it was Morris playing, just killing it. Yeah, man. I think he plays when he goes out now. He started playing. I haven't seen it yet, but I've seen like clips on like a YouTube. I was like, okay, he's getting back on and hitting it. Yeah, but he plays, I mean, cats like that. It's just, this is the people who I had here that were local that we saw growing up in these different little bands, man. And
Jelly Bean Johnson.
Jelly Bean, all of them, man. Jimmy Terry, Jelly Bean, and then when Jesse Johnson got here, he was a crazy sensation from Rock Island, Illinois, I think, from Rock Island. Shredding on guitar, just like this super duper, just, I mean, all this talent, man. And Prince spread so much. He did so much, so well, for so long, for so many. You know what I mean? Who has a legacy like that? I had the great fortune of my man from Ray Parker from Radio. Ray Parker, he's a great guitar player. Played on many songs that you probably don't even know. That you've
from the
heard,
band Radio, RAYDIO.
Yeah, from the band. Okay. Right, exactly. Yes. He would tell me that almost for a lot of projects, he said Prince would call me after he's done with the record just to hear everything. Now, back in the day, he was doing the same thing, but he had all these songs, and he didn't understand why Prince had all these songs. Like, what? Why you got, and the man, all you need is 10 songs and that's it, you know? And he said, little did he know, because all those songs weren't for him, I guess. You know, he was talking about Vanity 6, The Time, you know, all these, you know, ideas that he had, Apollonia, and his movie, you know. You know, Ray was like, little did I know that I was dealing with a genius over there, you know what I mean? But they all had places, they had all those songs, a lot of them had found spaces, you know, and places to live. And now look what it's had. He's created this great legacy, this great story, this great journey that he had, man, that we're all pretty much a part of, you know, in one way or another, you know, around here in Minneapolis and around the world. It's like I see so much influence, you know, and people don't even know. It's like we've created all these spaces, man, from, you know, you bring it back to Africa. I'm just seeing all these connections. I'm just real sensitive to it to figure out where things are coming on, what's influencing what. And yes, it becomes very blurry, but the fact that it's happening is a beautiful thing to see, you know, especially when we don't know it. Because to me, that's God in the room speaking through something you can't see, you can't hear, but you feel it. And it's the most powerful thing, you know.
Be like, surprise, I created all of this. And to God, it's all one. God is one, and His creation is one.
Right. So he's like.
The same way the Prince body of work is one. These are all my creations.
It's one.
I'm expressing myself in this way here. I'm expressing myself in this way here. And the same is true with the Creator.
And some might be in conflict with one another.
That's right. Human. And as part, and sometimes it's intentional.
It's intentional.
You know, exactly. Like Prince is seen as somebody who, you know, there's so much mystique around him, and like it seemed like he he loved to be in control of things, you know. And it's but one of the things that was really beautiful to me is I heard you in an interview talking about him sharing with you like really difficult moments for him. Like I think you were saying that he told you about being on that Rolling Stones tour before he was known, and being booed, and that that he wanted to quit. Yeah. And that Mick Jagger had to come and tell him, like, no, you can't quit. You have to do like these people are just wrong. Like you just like, you know, Mick Jagger mentoring him, recognizing like, yo, you're a genius. You're about to change the world. These people just they don't understand. But then for him to share that with you is a really amazing thing, man. It's one thing to inspire people. Like that's really very important to do, but also to see the difficult times that people go through and how they weather those storms, you know, because those are coming.
That had to be, can you imagine? I mean, one of the biggest rock groups ever, you're opening and you get booed. And I've also heard this story from the perspective of the revolution, which is, and it all lines up. I'm like, that's so crazy. You know, it was just, can you imagine the pressure? Well, I mean, I can imagine how that felt, man. I was like, how does that? He's like, my manager told me to go home. I could see I was done. Like, wow. And he's told this story before, but he actually personally told me. I was like, which I was, at the time, I hadn't heard the story like that. And just from the press, like he got booed, but that's all I knew. I didn't know what happened, how he felt, you know, what they were playing, you know. I just thought, man, he's sharing that with me, which is a really special moment. That, you know, for me, I took it as such. And I'm like, man, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. But I think just to give me some uplift to say, you know, whatever you're going through, I took it as, I don't know. To me, I was like, I don't know if it was bad as that, you know, and I hope it never would be, because that's a pretty huge platform. But
he's going to do everything a little bigger larger than the rest of us are.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Even his head bump moments, he's going to.
Right. It's going to be pretty, It's
going to be Prince level.
Yeah, absolutely. And that right there, just like, okay, basically it's just another example of like, keep going. I don't care what it is, man. It's like, you know, after a while, he's like, man, you can't, and I heard you say that likes to control stuff. I heard that's an understatement. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it seemed like that, you know, and I think a person can only get that far and be that detailed by being, you know, having that controlling nature. But at the same time, he was very giving from what I see. You know, I know with Mint and myself, he's very generous. You know, at the time, we really started, you know, frequenting, you know, out in Paisley and just hanging out with him, or him inviting us to do shows at the Forum or over in France or wherever, you know, if we were available.
You were on the musicology record.
Yes, yeah, call my name on that one. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
dope.
that
That's
was
so
fun, man.
ill.
That was a fun moment too. Just the whole recording, going out to when I Paisley to do it. It's like, oh, what you guys doing? And we just got together and Kip Blackshire and Chance Howard, and myself sing the background along with him. It's like, this is great. There's one part in the song. It's like we were locking so tight, all three of us. He's like, he said something to the effect of like, somebody has to mess up. It's too perfect. You guys, it's harmony. And it was just like we're like, okay, we know what to do. We know how to get the waves going. Which just
You, you had to like,
affect it.
you had to nudge your vibrato a little bit. So
Yeah, live, like absolutely. So, because he was like, at the time, he was like, no Pro Tools here, baby. We singing them all down.
wow,
I was like, all right.
dope.
So that was beautiful just to see and have that experience with them. And then going out to Los Angeles and doing the video was fun too. Picking out clothes. And then I remember being in the, by the trailers outside. We were, just getting ready to, go into the sound stage, whatever. And we're sitting out there talking, jib-jabbing. And at the time, it was Dave Chappelle's show, the Rick James thing and that whole thing. And they talk about the Prince thing. And so they were talking about the basketball, scene and everything. And so we're sitting there, me and Kip messing around like, yeah, it's like, yeah, it's like blah, 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 talking about the whole scene, laughing and whatnot. And all of a sudden, I look back, he's there, he's like, it's true. I was like,
He just like
I was like,
appeared.
where did you come from, first of all?
Yeah.
But he was like, it's true. It's like, all right. But yeah, that was fun, man. And yeah, had a great time shooting that. And at the time, after that, he said, you want to go see a movie? It's like, yeah. He said, we're all going to go see a movie over at Sony Soundstage. It's the new Jamie Foxx movie. So we premiered the Ray movie there. And we got down, he's like, man, that brother had all his mastering, That's all his masters. I'm like, and I was like, man, this is Oscar worthy right after that. And it was just, so all those connections, I remember then, Jamie went on to go win the Oscar and everything, but just having some of those moments with him are great. And especially the ones where he would just, a few times, called me out just to talk or rap, what's next for me, what's next for the group, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Those moments are what I most cherish.
If you could trade the success level, and you're somebody that's had tremendous success, a lot of the people that I'm friends with are people who never get, like I'm friends with Pharoah Monch. And I'm always just like, okay, I have no disrespect for Eminem whatsoever. But everything that people say about Eminem, to me, that's how I feel about Pharoah Monch. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, all of these people that, like, I was friends with MF Doom. And, like, everything that people say about certain people, it's like, your man's nice. But, like, my dude, it's like MF Doom,
Yeah.
I wouldn't, and I'm quite good at what I do. But it's like, I wouldn't trade the success of anybody. I would not trade it for the relationship that I have with you and Chuck D and Rakim, and like not for anything.
No.
Like just that type of camaraderie and like brotherhood, to have that level of brotherhood and just, connection with those people. It's like, man, I wouldn't trade spots with anybody in the world.
It's so wealthy to me. You know what I mean? That's what I call soul wealthy, soul rich. And there's that right there is like, winning a Grammy or having, so like somebody like a Stevie Wonder, when we went to go visit him in his studio, it was like, look, man, Swinging was on at the time. You sent the songs, you sent me Swinging. To get that compliment from him on that song, it's like, you guys, that song, you hit it perfectly. It's
That's
like,
my favorite Mint Condition
song.
song.
So hard. Oh, thank you. He said it's so hard to be a musician, try to have some depth, and sell a record where there are millions of people who love it. He said you all found a way to do that on.
If Stevie Wonder says that to you, there's not an award. There's no statue. There's no billboard. Right. There's not. They could take Hollywood down and put Stokley up there instead, and it will never match Stevie saying that specific thing to you.
That's what I'm saying. That right there is, I could have left.
Yeah,
I could have left. And
there are people that got a case full of trophies, and it's just like, that's cool. Man. Like, you have your thing and I have mine. Since the beginning of the Travelers Podcast, we've been talking about vicegerent, makers and merchants of fine men's tailored clothing, and just the reality that we can either be intentional about what we wear or unintentional. And there's so much there that really does have a major impact on the ways that we engage ourselves and also the way that we engage and impact the spaces into which we enter. When I prepare to do this podcast, I'm on tour. I'm not in my studio. I'm in a hotel, and I've been sleeping. If you're watching on a visual platform, I've been staying in this hotel for a couple of days now, and I had to clean it up. You know what I mean? I had to get it together. But I wanted to go through that process of setting the tone and setting the environment based on what is the intention. These conversations, the people I'm talking to, they matter to me. And so I want to convey that. I also want it to be pleasant for you if you're watching. So those things send a message to me about the importance of the work that we're doing. And the energy that I bring into this work has everything to do with the preparation that goes into it. The same is true with our bodies and with ourselves. There's this idea in our culture now that we're either sloppy and super casual and, we kind of, we dress for what we think is more comfortable and never mind what anybody thinks about it, or we're showing off. We're showing off how much money we have. We're stunting and flexing on Instagram. But the reality is that there's something beautiful that's neither of those things. The idea that, when I groom properly, when a person puts time into their appearance to be dignified, that it actually says something to us about our own value and about ourselves and about the work that we do. What am I giving my time to? What am I spending my days doing? Because I have a limited number of days. What am I doing with my time? I should honor whatever that is. You know what I'm saying? Like if I'm a janitor, and I have been. If I'm loading trucks at UPS, and I have done that. Those dickies were clean and ironed. You know what I'm saying? But there's something really important a message that we send to ourselves about honoring that process. And then when we show up in a way that's intentional and dignified, not flashy and showy necessarily, depending on the culture that we're in, it means different things for different people, but when we come and enter into spaces and we're dressed in a way and presenting ourselves in a way that's dignified, it encourages the overall atmosphere and vibe of that space that we want to be elevating. We're always going to be either climbing or sliding. And everything in the human's nature says, or everything in the human condition, I would say, says, don't work hard. Don't, be lazy. Come on, we incline towards laziness unless we understand the importance of diligence and consistent work. So I just say all that to say that it absolutely matters, the ways that we present ourselves and the way that we show up. Also, vicegerent clothes, vicegerent, V-I-C-E, gerent with a T at the end, is sourced in ways that are ethical. And instead of, you are spending money, you're making an investment, but these are pieces that are sourced ethically. The price that you're paying is because these are human beings that are making a livable wage. They're supporting their children and their families with what they do. You're not paying a corporation for its name recognition or for its advertising, and that they're actually keeping the profits for the people at the top, and the laborers that actually make your clothes are living in sweatshop conditions. And for most of us, this is the default unless you work really hard and go out of your way to find something different to put on. You know what I mean? So they're sourced ethically. The labor is what you're paying for, the time, the attention, the expertise, the level of mastery that they've reached. But then also you're getting clothes that are made for you. So they last longer, they feel better, they communicate something to you and to the people that you walk in a room with. You walk in a room dressed a certain way with this type of intention. It's not about look at me. A person feels honored to be in a room with someone like that. If you've ever seen these really dignified people, I can think of certain names that I won't mention now, but there are people that really are very thoughtful in their presentation. And then some of those people, when they look at me and smile at me and talk to me, it makes me feel extremely honored. I think about the Nation of Islam selling the newspaper, selling Final Call newspaper in the projects with suits on. And it's like, why are they wearing suits? Because they're really, because there's some sort of, they're honoring the people. They're honoring themselves. They're honoring the message, and they're honoring the people. They're like, you would get dressed up if you went and met with somebody rich and powerful, because you're honoring them. But we're honoring our people by dressing the way that we do. And when you're in those situations, if you've ever been out with them and you see them hug people and talk to people and shake hands and address people, and you see that it elevates the whole situation. So head to Vice Gerent and check them out. Make an appointment. I'm telling you, it's worth it. Yes, it's an investment, but it's an investment, and it's not a drop. It's not just it's not just a spend. You know what I mean? It's a true investment in the sense that it will actually bring more value to our lives and to the world around us. So very, very grateful to be partnered with Vice Gerent. Unity Productions is an incredible organization that brings together creatives to not only produce creative works and cultural content, but they also have UPF, which is Unity Productions Foundation. And UPF has a program that they do very specifically called Unfold Your Own Myth, where writers come together to speak to youth and to instruct youth and to accompany youth on the journey of writing about themselves, to documenting their own stories, and specifically in places where it's needed the most, in places like Afghanistan that have been, racked with war for years, and where people's stories are profound. Like, the things that happen in people's lives are amazing. I've learned this over and over dealing with youth whose stories aren't being told. I spent a summer in South Minneapolis, teaching hip hop as creative writing. So using the love that people have for hip hop to help them tell their stories. And these are like young Central South American youth whose families came to America. Some of them may have been undocumented at first, and some were still undocumented at the time. And to just even say to them like, yo, we need to hear your story, man. People don't know who you are. People talk about immigrants and illegals and all this stuff, and they don't know you, and they need to know you. I need to know you. I need to know what you've been through. I need to know what you've learned. What have you learned about yourself? What have you learned about your parents? And what have you learned about family? And what have you learned about America? They have a perspective on America that I'm not going to have. So like, I need your story, and other people need your story. And you telling your story is going to do for you, inshallah, what it did for me. It's like something about documenting your story is like, man, I matter. I'm important. And I have something to offer. And so this amazing work, Unfold Your Own Myth, is a seminar that you can get by going to upf.tv/unfold. So if you work with youth, if you're a teacher, if you're a community person, if you bring people together in any way, but particularly youth, go to upf.tv/unfold and see how you can bring this seminar. I'm one of the people that contribute to the seminar, very honored to do that, and also extremely honored to be together with UPF. You lean almost towards like gritty. There's like a funk thing, but there's a very deep rock influence on what you do as well.
Yeah, absolutely. All of that. I captured, again, having all these different genres and knowing, again, rhythmically, being able to identify where it was from and what I was doing. I used to take gigs with bands who folks would probably consider corny, but I would do that purposely just to see how funky I could make it. You know what I mean?
Dang, man.
And
You talking about when y'all came and did Conan with me? That's all right, man.
No. That's way before that, baby. That was a highlight, by the way. That was so much fun, man. Thank you for that.
No,
man.
thank you. And what I meant to tell you is like
moment, dude.
So that was my first time on TV, and
really?
like performing, yeah. And you all were so good to come out and do it. And I remember I did Uncle Sam Goddamn, and I remember you said
we love that shit.
No, you said to me, you were like, "That's an interesting choice, man." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And you said, well, you just said it so nonchalant. Like you weren't trying to be a teacher, but you said, these people tune in here and they're watching, they're here to watch Conan because they want to laugh. And then here we come. You know what I'm saying? It's like you got this like full black band with this like bald albino guy in the front talking about Uncle Sam, goddamn. He was like, you were like, yeah, he's gonna get letters. He's gonna get letters about this. He's gonna get letters. And I just remember, and I was like, dang.
Wow.
You think they might not have me back? And you were like, well, if you get big, they have to have you back. But if you don't, they might not. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And I was like, and I said, so should I do it? And you were like,
no.
You were like, yeah, you should do it. It's like, yes, yeah, do it.
It's like we here.
Yeah. And the connection with Dave was crazy, is that I didn't know Dave yet, but he was in, I think, Saudi Arabia at that time. And this is 2007, so he had left Chappelle's show, and he was like traveling around the world, and he was like finding refuge in places where Muslims are. So he went to South Africa, he went to Saudi Arabia, and he shows up in Saudi Arabia, and someone's like, "Hey, there's like a famous Black American comedian here." So that there's a prince, like one of the prince of the family, invites him to the crib because he's a big fan. And so Dave was like, man, it was a trip, man. He was like, I'm sitting there and I didn't know what was going on. And he's like, I just felt so out of my element. So he's like, he told me you could do anything you want. So I said, can we just watch TV? I just want to see some shit that I know, man. So he said he turned on the TV and it was us. It was me and y'all on Conan.
What?
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so he always was like,
that's crazy.
Yeah, that was like he was like, man, he was like, I saw that. And then, so that night that we were together with Dave and we did Uncle Sam Goddamn with y'all playing it.
Wow.
Every time I see him, he's like, I want that Uncle Sam Goddamn, baby. Give me that. That's another one, just like.
Oh, wow. That's an amazing story.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's a connection that we have that we were able to give him.
That was fun, man.
Yeah.
That was a great, we talked about that so much, man. It's like, man, that was just a great. Now I'm gonna have to go watch that, man. So it's got to be somewhere on YouTube.
I've never been able to find it, but we did that and one other one too. I can't remember which other one we did, but we did two of them at that same time. And they did not invite me back. You know, it's a trip. So my publicist on the next record was trying to get us on Conan, and Conan was in LA at this point, and so I had this song called "Morning in America." And it was me, and I had these like young dancers, Iman and Khadija, the twins, and I had a horn section, and I had just done a show with Tom Morello from Rage, and that song has like a hard guitar line in it, and so we asked Tom Morello like, hey, would you come? So we were gonna have this full band, these like Muslim women like popping and locking, and Tom Morello playing the guitar. And so our publicist pitched it to him, and they're like, yo, that sounds amazing. That's dope. We can't wait. All right, let me just go get approval. I'll hit you back in 20 minutes. They call back in 5 minutes, and they're like, no, we're not doing that. And it's like, okay, we can come up with another idea. We pitch another idea, and they're like, no, we're just not doing this. Thank you. I'm sorry. Goodbye. And then the same thing that same time happened with Letterman. Like I did a show. I did a show with Tom Morello and Jackson Brown, like same show.
Wow.
So I had a song on that same record called "Letter to My Countrymen" with Cornel West, and so I had this idea for Letterman where it was going to be me and Jackson Brown and Cornel West on stools, and Jackson would be playing Offender Roads, and we were all going to wear the black suits like Dr. West wears, and then I would do my song, and at the end, Dr. West does his little like rap at the end. And the same thing, the people at Letterman were like, oh, we love Jackson Brown. We can't wait to do this. Yeah, we'll hit you right back. Called us back 10 minutes. No, we're not doing that. I'm like, dang, should have listened.
That's interesting because usually, or sometimes you would see some interesting things, more progressive things on Letterman. Sometimes I guess sometimes the network, they get a wild hair up their ass. They're like, oh, let's do it. But mostly no.
Yeah.
But yeah,
and that's basically what you were telling me.
There's more platforms for it now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
there's more platforms for it now to see that kind of thing. But everything straight laced at that time was a little bit more. People are scared. People are, you know what I mean? And why to disrupt the funny here? You know what I mean? Like,
and that's exactly what you told me. Like they're here to laugh and just be entertained. They're about to go to bed. And I just didn't get that. I was just like,
they're about to be shocked. No, but I mean, it was a beautiful thing because I was quite aware of, I'm like, this is huge. You know what I mean? This is huge. You know, I mean, for that was the blow, man. I was like, man, I loved it. I was just like, wow, what's about to happen? Is this about to be a riot in here or something? It's crazy, but yeah.
It's always like that moment in what's the cartoon with the two brothers, Huey and his little brother, that live in the suburbs?
Oh, Boondocks.
Yeah, it's like that moment where he stands up.
Yeah.
The government is lying about 9/11. Reagan sold crack, da, 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 da. And he thinks everybody's head's going to explode, and everyone's just like, amazing. And they just go back to partying. That's how I always felt about all those moments. Like, I was just like, I'm about to tell the truth. And you do it, and the people are just like, aha.
Wow, that's funny. Okay, as we were saying,
right? They just move on like that never happened.
And that's the scary part about it. I said, did you just hear what came out of his mouth? Mm-hmm. This is actually happening. This is how people. Wow. No, you don't say. Oh, interesting. You know,
there's that thing about being independent, though. You know, that like when you build your career by really connecting with people, then that's something that those platforms or any record label, they didn't give it to you and they can't take it from you. They don't decide when you do that. And I know that you all in early on got like a Winnebago joint and just went to all of mostly the HBCUs. And I heard a story where it's like the most Minnesota thing ever, where you go to radio stations that were not playing your record and just thank them for thank you, sir. We just want to thank y'all so much for all the support. You know, we're a young band. We're from, just thank you. Just can't thank you enough. And da-da-da-da-da. And the whole time, that's a trip.
That was Terry Lewis. He's brilliant, man. This dude is just relentless. And I love that dude, man. They both were just like, because they were just like, we're just going to do what we feel. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. The song was going down the chart at the time.
Which record was that?
This was Pretty Brown Eyes, matter of fact, because we released Are You Free? And that went, and then we released Pretty Brown Eyes second. And so it got a little traction, and then it started, coming down. So we were like, we got to get out here and touch some people. He said, y'all got to get out there however you can. So we got rid of the Winnebago. Like you said, did a lot of the HBCUs, did a couple of video contests, that kind of thing. And man, that was the thing that really, big up to HUR in DC, and also there was a place in the Bay Area. The Bay Area and DMV are two spots that really helped blow us up.
Yeah.
It all started there.
Those are your homes,
DC,
away from
especially
home.
First.
DC.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that that's what got the party started, man. It lit it on fire, and then things kind of went up from there, And so when that would happen, so to cross that, I guess, the pop radio, the mainstream, whatever, it was Terry's idea. They both jamming, I'm sure. They were like, just let's go to these radio stations. And we'd be like, are they playing the record? No, just going to shame them into playing it,
Just, but with
like,
that Minnesota nice.
Yeah, and it's not like it wasn't being played at others. So we had like some, we had a little bit of fluid in us. So I mean, because everything was happening everywhere else. They were playing it at the competitor station. So we're like, well, they're playing over here. We just came from thank you for playing it as well. And they'd be like, I don't think we're playing the record, are we? Okay, you're welcome. Yeah, we're not playing the record. Yeah, so that happened. I was like, wow, that's crazy. And then next thing you know, it just exploded, It's just amazing, man. And just the whole experience I wouldn't trade, just going through, so much with Mint University, I call it, because that's what it was for me. And man, to have so much of that for so long, and to competing, we've had hits in every decade. To do that, getting one hit is hard enough, but then to sustain and keep that, and doing that all while being a band,
right?
I think unheard of as long as we've done it consistently. There's been people to do it, come back and forth, that kind of thing. But I think for our kind of journey, I don't know if we're not the only ones. We're very, the list is short.
Right. It's rarefied air.
But yeah, man, it's rare air, as you say. So yeah, man, just so proud of that.
So
so much.
There's a question that I really feel in my soul. And I'm almost hesitant to ask because you're a person that never has an unkind word to say about anything. But so when I hear about
Depends on what it is.
well,
Go ahead.
yeah, well, I mean, when I hear about you all going to the Bay and going to DC and how much love there is there, and I've spent a good amount of time in the Bay, and all of the music people that I know in the Bay, they're some of the most enormous Mint Condition fans. On this, we have a group of subscribers that have like a personal like Slack channel thing. We have a conversation of like supporters of this show, and one of them is my dear homie, this Muslim brother from the Bay named James Huff. And when I told him I told the crew like that group I'm interviewing Stokley today, he lost it. Like it's just message, James Huff. He was like, yo, because he's from the DMV.
Wow. Yeah.
Being in Minnesota.
Wow.
Being in the Minnesota music scene and going to not anybody's name, but, sitting there over and over and over again at the Current and at City Pages and like all of these, like, I mean, these are white music institutions that it really seems like Minnesota people will never toot their own horn individually, but they'll do it collectively. And so they'll talk about, man, we have the most amazing, inclusive music scene, and we got all this diverse so and so. I have always felt like it is a crime that for all of the music and all of the celebration of all of this stuff, that they act like Mint Condition doesn't exist. I mean, it's almost like y'all aren't even there.
It's crazy. It's been that way, But again, it's one of those things. It's part of as we know, part of a bigger system that we fit into. We know if the tone were different, it'd be a different celebration happening. It wouldn't just be people celebrating us who look like us. You know what I mean? It'd be everybody who listens to it from wherever you're from, enjoys it. But that's the way the system is set up. Yes, there's, this place has given me a lot of a lot of a lot of success just with what it is and what it is not. You know what I mean? So I think that's what I take away from it. It's like the fact that it's not some things that I wish it was. I think you create a kind of armor for that, so that becomes something, and then that becomes part of your thing, your existence, and something that you use in your art. So that makes it better. You turn it into something, a negative into a positive. But you would hope that you'd have, like, say, for instance, more places to play, since it's based upon your culture and that kind of thing. But again, part of this whole bigger systematic thing that we're under, this construct that we all have been under for quite a while. We try and fight against. We're all in it.
Yeah.
And I realized to some degree too, entertainers, and that are part of. We know we have moments that were used for distraction as well. I'm quite aware of that. That's why in what you do and what we say, we're entertaining, but also interjecting a little bit of life and some truth in there too. So I'm going to jab you with this, we're dancing and everything, but I'm going to jab you with that. It's like, oh, okay. So this is why entertainers and artists have always been the most explosive, the most dangerous to governments. And we're poking the bear kind of thing. So it's nothing new that I'm telling you or saying, but yeah, man, this thing is real. So I think it's like, man, fit in. Yeah.
Just this feeling that, like, all of this talk about diversity and we're such a diverse scene and all this kind of stuff, and it's just like, man, you are celebrating white artists, and then black artists. There are black artists in there, but it's specifically the black artists that are gonna, and no shade to those artists, but like those are people that are gonna make white people feel good about the type of white person they are. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I'm the type of white person that also listens to this. You know what I mean? But just straight, beautiful, amazing, culturally relevant, uplifting, life-giving music that's celebrated around the world. Like, just how dare you? How dare? It's like, it's a crime, man. It's a crime.
Yeah, I mean, So I mean, we tried to get our beloved First Avenue. It's like, I don't know the deal over there. I don't know the numbers, but all I know is what we've seen. We've either sold out a couple of times, or once, or at least once, or close to it. I know it was some small number, if according to the keepers there, but I don't know. I've seen lesser known artists there, for instance, get like the name on the wall kind of thing. I'm like, I don't understand. It's not a big deal, but it's just, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
It's just real, it's a little sus.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know, but okay, it's not, it's just what, and this is what other people have asked me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, why did your name? I was like, I never really cared about it, not really, but it is interesting,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's an interesting scene. It's one of these things, man, where wherever you grow up, you learn to deal with it as best you can. But as yourself, it's what you know the scene here, and you speak to it. It's like, and this is part of a larger piece that we're all dealing with. This is just our section of the world, and there's other sections in the world that are like us too in this country. But you do with it what you can, and I think what speaks louder, you can say what you want, but those of us who know, we know what's moving, what is America's biggest export,
Right.
And what you see, I'm sure over in Turkey and places that I visited, you can't contain that.
Right.
The culture, the dress, the style, the speech, everything. Not to mention the music and everything. It's spice of life, man. Which again, you gotta figure it's like, man, this stuff came from somewhere. So
I mean, you're talking about the original people. You're talking about everyone. Everyone says.
That's what I was getting to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, this thing about like so many like people in their 20s like hate their parents, and it's like, well, if you stick around long enough, though, you're going to eventually start revealing their influence on you. You know what I mean? And it's just yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah,
and people don't have another global way to relate to the world of meaning. Like everything else is material. Everything else is just dealing with, technology and what you can hold in your hand. But like, and especially with the collapse of so many wisdom traditions and religions that like people are abandoning those things. So, okay, so how do we access the world of meaning? It's really through culture. It's really through music. It's through, the ways that we talk and interact, and artists are the only people that really can get away with publicly. Like Chance the Rapper said, I talk to God in public. Like the only people that can really do that without having to explain ourselves. Yeah. And everybody in the world is doing that through the lens of not only African people, but the African people who experience the worst that the human can do, the worst that the evil side of a human being can offer to others.
Yeah.
That's crazy. One of the other things that when I talk about like you sticking to your guns and holding to your principles, just the amount of time that the band stayed together. You know what I mean? And like how difficult it is for any group of people. And just the fact that powers at work seem to be breaking bonds between people and really undermining the idea of community and of working together. And I know that joint wasn't always easy. I know one time, I feel like Odell was telling me one time, he was like, we used to punch each other in the face all the time, every day. He was like, we used to fight because there was a weird moment one time. I can't remember what we were rehearsing, but there was like very clearly like tension. And I'm not going to recall. I'm not going to but there was tension with two people. And you looked at me and you were like, "That's 5, Brother Ali." And I was like, "Okay." And I was sitting there with OD, like everybody else got up and left, and he was just sitting there like, "Man." And I was like, "Yeah, it's hard to." And one time you called it a musical marriage.
Absolutely. I've been married to them longer than anybody. Longer than my wife. That's because you're talking about relationships, man, and you live, with these gentlemen 24/7, pretty much on the road for many years, and them just like it's your brothers. You create that bond, and then for a long time before that, you're eating together, you're having all these discussions about stuff. You're traveling together, seeing a lot of the same things, and just I can't imagine it doing what we did without them. I mean, it's not the same, but just an amazing. That was a gift, man. To have that, you know what I mean? And I realized that for me, like I said, I'm a natural collaborator. So it was, I guess, pressure in some way. I think it would have been more pressure. And it's something I did think about from time to time, but not really, just because I was comfortable and loved being part of a collective like that, because I knew we had something special to say. You know, a dime a dozen artists, you know, in vocal groups and solo artists. That's something, you know, I always knew down the road I could do, whatever, do a jazz project here, or whatever project I wanted to do. You know, if I had the ambition, I was going to do it at somewhere along the line, I guess. And but I always felt like that collective of band, you know, of what we represented, to me spoke volumes. And that's what I was really thinking. You know, people thought I was one spot and I was totally somewhere else. I'm like, no, this is bigger than just music. It's like what we represent is Black brothers coming together, working, having success, and continuing and sustaining that success through everything, through all of the challenges, because people are going to have challenges. That's just life. And you work through it, you work past it, you work under it, and you figure out, you make compromises, and, you know, letting everybody have a voice, and moving ahead. That's the way to do it. You know what I mean? And so I knew that I was the key. Everybody plays different roles. I knew my role sometimes would be like the utility guy or to clean this up, and then I would switch. We'd all have different roles. It was just, we would know how to move after a while together. Yes, the early days we had those fights, and you know, verbal or physical, and it's like, just, you know, that's how you know your family is like, man, you go through that stuff. And okay, next, what's next? What are we doing? And that's the attitude that I had. I was like, okay, that happened. You guys done? Are we done with? Okay, here's what's
now what
staring us in the face. We did all that for, you know what I mean. So, but a fun moment. So many amazing fun moments we had.
Yeah, of course.
And I couldn't take that, you know, with all the tension, and that the tension is part of the fire, though. You know, you got to have that tension release. Tension relates. You see it with movies all the time, in stories that you build. The same thing. You know, you build something that's beautiful, and it's like, oh, where's the tension? Oh, there's the big bad wolf. How are we gonna overcome this? Oh, we overcome it. You know, whatever your story is. You know,
when you finally, because I know that like industry stuff, people were trying to get you to go solo for years and years, and you just didn't do it. So obviously,
almost every album.
Obviously, when you did it, it was time. And I know that you're not alone in feeling that way. Like I know that guys just were like, I have a vision and I'd like the chance to just take my vision to fruition without navigating all this. And I've seen it with, you know, like Chuck D held Public Enemy together. So he held Professor Griff and Flavor Flav in the same unit for decades.
Wow.
With all of this, you know, with all of these highs and lows and joys and woes, and that like he had to hold all of that together for so long. When you finally made that decision, did you mourn it? Like, did you grieve?
Not in the way that I thought I would. I kept expecting some big moment or something like that, which lets me know that, you know, I've been preparing, not knowing it in which ways for this for a long time. You know, not even thinking that I wanted to do this. I think just everything has prepared me for these moments. You know, and this is probably, when I really started thinking about it, this is probably even before Mint, you know, it's preparing me for life, a life in the industry, a life as a musician, as a creative musician, more so than a popular singer kind of thing. Because I've always had a musician attitude. And other musicians know, it's like, you know, you're more like a musician than a singer. Because the thing is, there's an air about singers that have this little bit more holier than thou, and, you know, we have moments where it's like, yeah, we feel none of us would be here and doing what we're doing if we didn't think we're at least some kind of good. That's just, we get to a point where,
because at the end of the day, we hold the mic and we're like, everyone will be listening to me for the next hour.
Absolutely right, exactly.
And trust me, it's the right thing.
Exactly. So you have the right kind of ego for that. We get, you know what I mean? If you're centered correctly,
or it's a calling.
And
it's just like, hey man, ego got nothing to do. I'm a servant of this calling.
Right.
Yeah.
There you go. Right. It's more so that than anything, because it is, like I said, it's a form of prayer for me, which means it's coming through me. You know what I mean? And people really get that the more that they're moved, the more that I feel that it's like, wow, my channel is open today, like more than it is usual. You know. But I think that's the thing they see, and then that ends up reflecting. It's like, this is what you are. That whole thing that we already know. It's like, you know, just reflecting yourself, what's already in you. I'm bringing that out, and you know, it's all speaking through all of us. Those of us connected know that and feel that, and that's what that is. Some people can't articulate like that, or they may not even see it like that. But I do.
So you're saying that when music or when some sort of expression resonates with somebody, it's because it's holding a mirror to them and like, this is what's in you.
Absolutely. And something may be blocking. Just like we need something that's like a clogger, spiritual clogger, spiritual plunger, I don't know. And we just kind of like, oh, for a moment, they're like, oh, I didn't see it from that perspective, but this makes me, I'm open. And I think that's, again, what meditation is about. That's why they hum, because there's certain frequencies within your being that will make you feel better or worse. You know, hitting certain chakras. I mean, it gets you to a physical plane. It really does, you know. It's where that certainly we hum. When we were in the field, it's not like we felt good, you know, chopping that, you know, getting that cotton and that kind of thing, you know what I mean? But I think humming, you know, having those field housing, I think, you know, the blue note, it made us feel better. It made it less bad.
Right.
I'll say that. I won't even say feel bad. It's just, it made us feel a little bit less bad, probably. Working out in the hot sun all day, sun up, sun down, you know, probably whips, cracking that whip and that kind of thing. That can't be fun. You know what I mean? So I think that kind of resonance within you, man, it does something. It opens that channel, so make you feel like you can breathe, even if it's for a few minutes. So the time that we're up there on stage and people are listening to you, they're dancing, whatever, rocking with you, or they're closing their eyes, listening to what you got to say, swinging and swaying. That's a powerful moment. And it's no different than, you know, a preacher getting up there saying some words. It's the same kind of thing, preaching in the pulpit. And hip hop is like church, you know, and the entertainment industry is like church, you know. We're the preacher up there and the congregation is down there, and we're saying what we say, and they're saying, yeah, amen. We with you. You know what I mean? That's why it's really powerful. Like what people say, and it's like, you know, when they say you got to be held accountable, the people are looking at you, and you know, we're examples of what you can become or not, you know, become. It's a really powerful platform to have. So I realize the older I get, the responsibility of it. And, you know, we wrestle with that because it's like, okay, who am I? I'm different than what the perception
Introducing Stokley
is of me. Right.
That's the way I
Absolutely.
felt like that was such a powerful statement, man.
Yeah.
Did you, I mean, I would imagine that there may be some instepping outside of this fortress that you've been in for so long. And, you know, there's some degree of uncertainty or maybe even fear or some sort of trepidation about, is it going to work? Are the people going to come? Are the people going to, you know, are they going to understand? Because also, did you just now start going by just the single name Stokley?
No, I always had, you know, but some people just use the last name sometimes. And some, you know, I was like, let me just make it a thing. And I just felt like this time that we've entered into, people are more relying on things than their own brain. So their brain parts, like it's shortening. No long form reading. It's, you know, catchphrases and blurbs and, you know, sound bites.
Memes, dude.
You know what I mean? So they're shorter, and you know what I'm talking about. Stokley. If you look on my latest Sankofa album, I was like, you know, it's just going to be one word, you know, for the titles. You know what I mean? Lost, vibrant, she.
I didn't even think
woman.
about that. They're all just one word.
Look at the title. It's just all like, you know, there's one that's probably got a long title, but I was like, I'm just one word.
Dude.
That's all we need here, people.
Song,
you know what I mean?
album, show.
Right, Sankofa.
Sankofa.
Yeah.
Is Pops the one that coined that phrase that says Sankofa makes the past a current event?
Yeah, like as I do when I go over there, I have my phone, and once we start to, I turn on my voice memo, and that's what that was. And we were talking about. I was asking about what you thought about the concept of Sankofa, which I've heard growing up my whole life. You know,
it means to go get something from the past, as though like this is what I've.
Yes.
People used to say when Malcolm started going to Africa. Malcolm passed away today. This is the anniversary. When we're recording this? They say Malcolm was criticizing the people that he said, "Why would you go back to Africa? I haven't left anything in Africa. Why you left your mind in Africa?" But Sankofa means to like go back and get the things that were left and to bring them into the moment.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And that was me. I'm like, you know, I brought all the things back. That's the whole thing about the album. It's like everything of who I am. The only element I did not, it's just, you know, I'm going to get it together, is my hip hop element. And a lot of people don't realize it because I really quit drums pretty much to the side, put the linoleum down for about a year and a half when things was popping off, you know, back then. And that part, I wanted to have a DJ, the whole thing, but budgets and figured out another time.
Ali Shaheed Muhammad
That
will do
part
it.
of it. Oh man,
He
that would
loves you.
be meant to love that dude.
Yeah, he
You know what I mean?
loves
It's
you.
been a minute since I got to ring him up, but yeah, man, it's that's the only other element. So going back to Get It, speaking on the whole Sankofa project is more all of it. You hear stuff from like the 70s, the 80s. A thing I did with the bonfire that reminded me like an 80s feel, the 90s with with Snoop, Vibrant, my roller skating 90s song, that kind of thing, and everything up to now. But it has that thread of the percussion and what I came through, and it's laced every few songs with that, just to remind you, just kind of snap you back, and take you through all those genres. R&B, you have this trap kind of sound and stuff. You have some old 70s soul kind of vibe, and everything in between, and all the different themes that we have, ranging from, just love relationships into like Recipe, which is like basically shades of white supremacy, basically. And just all these a few different themes on there, and it's wrapped and encapsulated in different. It's just like the album reminds me of life. You have these, you have the relationships, there's sexual tension, there's social tension, and all these different things are all wrapped into one. And so for me, again, this is how I came back. Brings it back to what you asked me about Pops, coming and seeing him fighting, and all that stuff with the community, and just being at odds. And I remember very young, but he reminded me. I remember like when the FBI came to our house, that whole thing, asking him about people and characters he was hanging with, but because they were trying to advance our folks and everything. Anyways, another story, but yeah, man, it's all this stuff is connected to me. You know what I mean? And it brings me back to that. Again, going back to Get It, me remembering what I came through, what makes me everything I am today, not just as a musician, but as a human.
It's amazing to me that they closed the roller gardens, which for people who don't live in the Twin Cities, I mean that's like one of the Black cultural hubs for decades, man. For decades. I mean, every bit as much as Riverview Supper Club or but the
Absolutely
losing Disco T,
that hurt.
And,
Yes.
losing Brother Jules, and closing.
Oh man,
but
right.
that song Vibrant, I feel like some of that energy, is alive in that record. So the record is still
funny?
there.
Before we did the video, I still have my skates from back. For some reason, I don't wear this size now, but for some reason I still fit my skates. So it must be a bigger size. I don't know. Anyway, I needed some wheels. I was like, I can't have these same dusty, urethane wheels that I had back, And so I went to the garden like 2 days before I went to go shoot that video. And I wasn't going to skate. I was like, but I was like, I got to test them out just to see. I said, give me these, let me test these out, and boom, boom, boom. And I only planned on, just skating one song. Man, I skated for the rest of the night, because I forgot. You used to go there, and a buddy of mine, we used to win a couple of skate contests, that kind of thing. Man, I was like, all right, I still got a little boogie left in me. I'm like, all right, a little boogie left.
I can't do it at all.
And,
I can't skate at all.
So you're right, man. You're right. A lot of the spirit is straight, from the garden, man. I went, and it's just, so I'm so glad that I had that moment 2 days before we shot that video. So yeah, man, because I was planning on going on a Thursday night. I guess that's the popping night, or was. And I'm like, that's gone. And the funny thing about it, I feel like there's been a surge in like roller skating. Just these roller. I was like, oh, these communities of roller skaters. I'm like, this is killing.
Yeah,
Love it.
It feels like if they just could have held out another year, or like.
I know. Just. Yeah, man, that's tough.
Yeah,
that's tough.
Yeah,
a piece of culture, piece of history.
Yeah,
history.
Yeah. That's a huge part of the history. But I just think about like the idea of Sankofa, and literally, thinking about you as a little kid with the drums that your parents brought back, from the continent, but they're on the wall on display as a historical remnant, and then you take them off the wall on your own and start playing them, and wake up your father and mother like that. You know what I mean? To me, that's crazy. Like, when you're talking about a full circle moment with Sankofa, it's like, you know what I mean?
Right.
To literally get the remnants from the past, and then play them just from your natural self, without training, without anyone, without being, necessarily groomed to play.
Right.
You know what I mean? And the idea of being able to reawaken. You know what I mean? To reawaken, to be like, this sounds right. Like this reminds, because it starts
Yeah.
reminding them of something as well.
Right, you know, and not just, yeah, it's like, wow, okay, I remember this, and you know, a- man, I swear this stuff, man, there's no coincidences. It's true. I know you know that. When I did go to Ghana, the first night we got there, and I didn't know, it was just this great, wonderful. You know, we were in Accra. Somehow I find myself in a drum circle that night with drummers and dancers, and I was like, I don't know you know, he said, I will show you the rhythm, brother. He's tapping it out on me, and taps the you know, I said, when the lead drummer starts off, does the drum call, here's the answer, and then we go in. I'll cue you in. I swear I was just looking, I couldn't even believe I was floating at that point, because I mean, I had come back. We went there to do the woman video with Kitty, but I knew it was going to be much richer. It wasn't just about going to do a video, because it was my first time there, and just blew my mind. That night, that moment, that's transcended. I mean, just, I was in another plane. It was definitely a prayer, and it was just like, man, this is where I'm supposed to be at this exact moment in life. This is definitely not a coincidence, and this is how I started. Everything, it was just really, it was a powerful moment, you know, to watch that and to see that, and to be a part of that for the first time. So that let me know, like, everything is in alignment. Just keep following the path, keep following your heart, keep reaching, keep striving, keep climbing, you know. And that's I think the mantra for all of us, you know, fall down, you know, keep getting up and push past it, you know what I mean? There's a lot waiting on the other side. So, you know, all the things in the beginning, you say going back to get it, that's why it's really, you know, having Pops on the record definitely completed the whole assignment. You know what I mean? So, yeah, man, really, really grateful for it.
I got 100 other questions, but I can't. I have to. That's got you right. I mean, that's got to be. That's got to be the.
No, it's all good, man.
Yeah.
All good.
Yeah, man.
I'm here for you, man.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, it's
Yeah.
really it's a really beautiful thing. I don't know if you know, just real quick, but we played in the band together, Ursus Minor, with Jeff Lee Johnson.
Yes,
Rest in peace.
that's right.
The great Jeff Lee Johnson. I mean, I miss that guy so much, man.
I really do, man.
Sitting there just hunched over the guitar, you always just see the back of his
That's right.
head.
He was something else. Oh my goodness, just an amazing soul, man. This dude, yeah, that's him. Like,
always like you just see the like he'd be yeah. When somebody did something cool, he wouldn't even look at anybody. He just
right.
Oh
yeah.
So good, man.
Amazing talent.
But that was the first time when we did that band and we went to Paris. That was my first time in Europe. That was like my first time like playing music outside of America. Yeah.
I did not know that.
And so I went there with you. And that also was, you know, when I converted to Islam, I became an imam and got married and did the whole thing. I just married the first Muslim woman because I'm like, well, she's a Muslim, I'm a Muslim, then it'll work, right? Like,
let's go.
Okay, 17. Let's see how that works. And it was like so we got Islamically divorced, but it took a long time for the legal part to go through. So in the meantime, I met my wife now. We've been together 18 years, baby, you know, great, amazing. Like that, you know, met the one, but I couldn't marry her legally yet because I was still. So the first time we went to Paris together was literally the day I got on a plane, like they delivered the papers telling me that was done, like legally. And then we left and went to Paris and got to spend that like a week with you and Jeff. And
really?
Yeah. And you know, just like, and you showed me a lot about just being out of the country and performing music, and you know, just gave me a lot of game. Jeff did too. And we were in those sessions, and you all actually let me like stretch out. Like you treated me like a musician. You all were the first real musicians that would treat this rapper like a musician. And so that was the first time. And then the second time we went, you know, it was maybe 2-3 months later, and I had finally was like, okay, now I can marry my first wife legally, and you know, the career hadn't really gone very far yet, so I used that second trip to Paris as our honeymoon, and then we got married right before that, and so that second trip, you know what I'm saying? So like I was with you when I got free from the first joint, and then when we finally made the second one legal. You know what I mean? And those were major moments for me, man. And not to mention, you're on our record, or you're singing on my records. And then, man, so you and Chuck D are on the same, my Us album, on the same track. Like you're singing up under Chuck.
Yeah. All right. I was like, I didn't realize when we were putting it together. I was like, oh, okay. I'm part of some. All right, part of something here.
Yeah, yeah.
All
Like
right.
you're singing
Yeah, I
up
appreciate
under
that.
Chuck.
Thank you. Yeah.
But then Chuck asked me to be on a Public Enemy record, and that's a whole other level. You know what I mean? Like if it's like they're patting you on the head, like yeah, kid, I'll be on your record.
Yeah, it happens. Come on.
So then you were on my record, and then I got the call like, hey, would you do a verse for this new Mint record? I was just like, yo, and those happened at the exact same time. So I did the Mint record and the Public Enemy record in the same week. I want to say it was within a few days of each other.
That goes down as one of the baddest. Nobody could have done that, and that's one of the baddest verses that I've ever heard. Just you encapsulated everything perfectly. It was clear. It was, just concise, and then only you with your cadence.
I have no idea what I said.
And everything.
I just know I'm on a mint condition record. Damn it!
Oh my Lord!
Just like I'm on a mint condition record. Yeah, man.
Yeah, man. Thank you, bro, for that. Yeah. That's a blessing. We are a part of history together. The legacy is strong, and it's just amazing.
Yeah.
So much gratitude.
Man, well, we celebrate you and we love you, and it's just one of the great honors to know you and to be connected to you. Likewise. And your beloved family. And we pray Allah make everything easy for especially for your parents, and give them a long life of health, and give you everything that you desire, especially to the best of your intentions, beyond your wildest dreams, for you and your family and all your loved ones. And yeah, man, you're a treasure, man. You're a living treasure, and we're very, very grateful to have you.
Likewise, man. Yeah, may God bless you and your family over there, man. Keep you safe and prosper everything that you want to do. I hope that you get it, man. I know you will. You're doing everything that you're supposed to be doing. Well done already, bro. Continue.
I look up to you.
Continue to spread the word, and thank you for this platform too.
I look up to you,
really, and
I look for your approval, and so when you give it to me, it matters to me.
Bro, you are. You've got people way beyond me that you already know, but the track that you're on, man, you got Cornell and oh man, Chuck D and all these different peanuts, many others that I try to follow you as much as I can. I'm like, oh, he's doing this, and he's over here. I'm like, wow, that's my cat.
Yeah,
man. My cat. I'm proud, man. Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for rocking with us another week on the Travelers Podcast. Special thanks to our guest, Stokley, my dear friend and brother. As you can hear, we could talk for hours and hours and hours, and we're just probably going to have to wait till the next time we go to Paris together or something. But my dear beloved friend, big brother to me, a teacher to me, a mentor, I think, to us all. Much love to the great Stokley Williams, and also to his family, not only to his father and mother, but also to his wife and his children, and to the whole family for the sacrifices that they make. Special thanks to our sponsors, our partners on this podcast, Zika Foundation, to UPF. Special thanks to Resma Minikim. Special thanks to Vice Gerent. I also want to give special thanks to Emna Mirza, Mansour Panawala, Last Word, Amir Rahman, my man Ant, my man Darian Washington, and to Mark at Medina Hip Hop, who did our logo. The Travelers Podcast is produced by Brendan Kelly and is a production of Travelers Media. Please make sure to head to brotherali.com. Check out our tour dates. We're on the road right now, having an amazing time. We'll see you next week. We got another dope guest for you next week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.